Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the rest of you. And welcome back to episode 36 of Bitcoin Magazine Live. I am joined today not only by Alex McShane, but very special guests all the way from El Salvador, Max Keiser and Stacy Herbert. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you guys doing?
I've got my
Nice,
coconut.
nice, really nice.
We're in the tropics.
Sounds like no complaints can be had.
Yes,
All
well,
right.
you know what? Bitcoin is for lovers of economic freedom, and that's where we are. We're in the province called La Libertad in El Salvador. So it is all about liberty, it's all about freedom, and we feel it, and we feel the happiness, we feel the hope, we feel the love. Everybody here is filled with love and filled with positive attitude.
Yeah,
Love
I
that.
second that.
Love that. And you guys have been down there now for quite some time. Talk to us a little bit about sort of when you got there and the energy you felt coming in and how you've seen that grow and what it's turned into.
Well, the first time we arrived here was, of course, in November for Bitcoin Week. At the time, the only information really about down here was if you Googled it, it was like it's dangerous, you're going to be kidnapped, you'll be murdered, all these sort of things. So we arrived and were, of course, very shocked to find the exact opposite. We found paradise, we found utopia, we found happiness and optimism, and very, very, very friendly people, and a government who was engaged very actively with the people and wanted the best for Bitcoin and the economy. Now we've been here, we arrived again on January 4th, so we've been here for over a month, and it's kind of like on Bitcoin time. So one day here is like 7 days in fiat world, and so much happens every single day, and it's all good. We've only encountered good things. We travel all over the place. You've probably seen our photos. We're constantly tweeting about what restaurants we're at. We're walking through the streets of San Salvador, even downtown, which apparently was just 3 years ago a no-go zone. We've been down there at midnight walking around in front of the National Palace. So we have been enjoying just an amazing, wonderful, easy, nice time here.
Yeah, definitely. It's gorgeous. It's difficult to stay focused because you just want to go out in the water and hang out all day. But we do have to do some work occasionally.
Yeah, we have a big announcement coming out tomorrow, so hopefully everybody will tune into that. But I also, right now it's hard to even lift this coconut here because I did take my first surf lesson. I'm ashamed to admit that it took me all this time being here in El Zonte, and yet it took me until yesterday. I actually got a lesson from the OG surf instructor here at Chimbera, who is part of the Bitcoin Beach story. So he gave me some lessons, and remarkably, and I'll post the photographic evidence, the proof of surf, I got up, stood up on the first go. So that was a shock. But it made me kind of fall over because I was laughing so hard because I didn't expect to actually be able to stand up. So I was just like broke out in total hysterics and giggles, and I fell off the board. But then I was only able to stand up like 5 more times before my arms just gave out. So I need
I
to
like
build up my upper body strength.
I like the casual brag. I stood up on a surfboard my first day 6 times. So, but that is incredible, Stacy. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Um, I'd love to maybe just ask the two of you to share with us a little bit about what is something other than this big announcement, which please let our viewers know where, if it should be on Twitter, that they should be keeping an eye out for. But what are upcoming things that you're seeing get built in El Salvador right now that's just like giving you more energy and more excitement for what's to come down there?
Well, in March, they're going to start letting people invest in the new Volcano Bonds. So we should see a pricing on that between March 15th and March 21st. So this is extraordinary innovation coming to Bitcoin. It's really the moment where securities laws are now going to be rewritten based on having a country with Bitcoin as legal tender. So that'll attract a lot of capital to El Salvador, which is positioning itself as the Wall Street of Bitcoin. And for this region, I think it'll very quickly mean a huge bump in the economy, GDP, capital coming into the country. It's very funny because last week Fitch, the rating agency, downgraded El Zante. Rating agencies
El Salvador.
I'm sorry, El Salvador. You know, rating agencies are notoriously late, lagging indicators. They tend to be about between 1 and 2 years behind the actual curve. And so this is a classic situation where they've come in and downgraded a country that's now just on the verge of, with GDP exploding, tourism exploding. They're going to recapitalize the entire country with Volcano bonds. They'll be debt-free probably in 10 years. And so that's coming in March. I think that's going to really rock the world.
I also want to add, my observations of this Volcano Bond and the process up to it. The fact that the president, Najib Bukele, has managed to keep closest to him in this whole process the best Bitcoiners out there. Samson Mao and Bitfinex have done an amazing job. We've been able to observe it firsthand, and they are just extraordinary, and it just gives me a lot of hope that we're all going to make it, right? This is actually going to work. Our conversation with the president also, we walked away from that meeting with him convinced that he's a Bitcoin maximalist, and there's no doubt in my mind about that, and he's got the best people around him. So I'm pretty confident about that, and that gives me hope for the future of what's coming for hyper-Bitcoinization. It's happening for real.
I love that, especially because sometimes we don't necessarily get the best information when it has to circulate through mainstream media. Max and Stacy as well, I'd love your thoughts on, you mentioned this Volcano Bond getting downgraded. How much of that do you attribute to the IMF and what they're saying about everything Bukele and El Salvador is doing versus actually legitimate concerns, if any?
Well, the Volcano Bond didn't get downgraded because it's not yet listed. It's not yet trading. They're talking about the existing sovereign debt. And like I said, the rating agencies tend to be a year or more behind the curve, behind the actual news. Remember, in a stock like Enron, Wall Street gave it a AAA rating buy the day before it collapsed. Or James Cramer was on CNBC promoting Bear Stearns the day before it collapsed. And Wall Street rating analysts are really tend to be the worst source of security analysis you can possibly find. It's a quid pro quo game. It's pay to play. It's what's called soft money, where you get the rating you pay for. It's payola. It's very corrupt. So I guess Fitch, like Moody's or S&P, they're on the take. They do whatever you pay them to do, and I guess the U.S. and the IMF is so insecure about El Salvador becoming a monster powerhouse in finance that they decided they were going to waste some taxpayer money bribing some rating agencies. But they're not in a fiat world. What's it to them? They just print more. They don't care. The fact that they cause all this rampant inflation and heartache in the heartland, they don't care about that either. So this is what Bitcoin fixes. And we have it here in El Salvador, and it's very exciting that it's becoming legal tender. It's legal tender now, and what the very near-term future will bring.
I think the President Bukele said it best on Twitter when he said, guess what, El Salvador DGAF, when they downgraded. And if you read their rationale, I mean, it's a tiny amount. It's $800 million that they have to roll over next year. That's puny in the global, $100 trillion bond market. It's nothing. It's it's a joke that they would downgrade, especially in an economy which you see, if you come here, is booming. There are tourists everywhere. Hotels are difficult to find because it's totally booked up. People are spending big here, and they're coming in, and so much investment is coming into the economy rapidly. It's a joke. So, of course, but the way the fiat world works is nobody will have to get fired or demoted from getting it wrong completely.
I like to say in a lot of industries, but especially fiat oriented, you can continue to fail upwards and get fired for a promotion repeatedly.
Yes,
And for context, you mentioned it's an $800 million debt that they're sort of downgrading. The US debt currently sits at over $30 trillion, but no one wants to, scold or talk to the US or have the IMF discuss with the US, maybe redefining their monetary policy that the rest of the world has to.
exactly. Well, the overall debt is larger, but the payment they
Right.
have to make that they can roll over is just 800 million next year. So
The,
they've
the
got a
published
plenty
debt
of time.
is at that 30 trillion. God help us when we've finally come to terms and realize what that number actually looks like.
Right, and of course, when you're looking at sovereign economics and doing credit analysis, the debt to GDP number and the percentage is always looked at. And in this country, it's higher than it was 5 years ago. In the U.S., of course, it's over 100%. But a lot of it has to do with how you define GDP. So in the UK a few years ago, to make the debt look smaller compared to GDP, they started to include heroin use and prostitution in the way that the country calculates its GDP, just to make the debt look smaller. I would imagine that in the US last week when they were giving out crack pipes to everybody, that's a way to boost GDP. They'll include crack in the GDP. It'll make the debt look smaller, right? But in El Salvador, they don't worship crack. They're not crackheads here. They're not degenerates like you find in with the White House and in Washington D.C. These are good people. They're not degenerates.
Actually, if you look at the global debt to GDP, the average is about 97% debt to GDP across all nations across the world. Higher, the developed nations, the richest nations, is even higher than that. They're over 100%. But El Salvador is at about 84.5% right now, 85%. So they're actually trending. They're doing better than a lot of economies around the world.
Yeah, that number's going to go to zero in the next 5, 6, 7 years, thanks to volcano bonds.
They're doing better than most countries with regards to GDP and debt. They're trending in the right direction. I saw a statistic a few weeks ago that in the last 6 months, they have actually seen an increase in tourism versus many other countries that have seen a decrease. It only sounds like El Salvador seems to be focused on one direction, that is growth and moving their country and citizens forward. Do you mind sharing a little bit? I know you've spent so much time with Bukele, working with him, talking with him, and going around spreading the word about Bitcoin, both in El Salvador and helping him talk abroad. Can you share a little bit about what these conversations look like with him, what you guys are discussing, and maybe just a little bit about where his head is at as far as what he'd like to see El Salvador focus on in Bitcoin?
Well, he's definitely a Bitcoin maximalist. He knows all the players. He knows. We heard some very funny stories about some of the shit coins that were trying to get into El Salvador.
Not from him. We've heard it from other people.
Expose them.
Yeah, just so you understand. He didn't talk about them.
No.
But he's a Bitcoin maximalist, and he's really smart. Okay, so you understand. When he tweets one way, he's a public figure, just like Max would go up on stage and shout and scream, but he's very, very intelligent, very smart, and very calm. And he gets Bitcoin deeply. We talked extensively about that. That was a lot of our conversation, was talking about how he came about Bitcoin. I've read his biography in Spanish that was written back in 2018, but it covers him back to 2012 when he's first starting out as running for mayor for Nueva Cuscatlan, which is outside of San Salvador, before he became mayor of San Salvador. And all of these quotes from him back in 2012 were, I asked him, I thought he was maybe a Bitcoiner then, because he spoke like a Bitcoiner, and what his concerns were all economic and about sort of that fiat problems of cantillionaires and the fact that we should attract here to El Salvador. The fact that the number one priority of most people here up until the President Bukele was that people wanted to leave El Salvador. They wanted to go to America, and that was the dream of most Salvadorans. Now he needs to, swap that around and get all the diaspora. There's like 3 million Salvadorans living in America. The dream needs to be here, and the economic reality needs to be here. So why not build an economy that they want to return to? Why not build an economy and a culture like where it's safe and good to build your wealth? And I think you see that. We've met many Salvadorans here who actually live in America and are returning here, or they're visiting here and thinking of moving back, and they can't believe they came back from Los Angeles mostly, and they're like, they want to see with their own two eyes, is this real? Because this was never part of the story that they had growing up, but now it's swapped around. So that's in my opinion, that's what is the number one thing for him.
So when thinking about kind of the future potential for bringing people in, does the Bitcoin city play into your analysis of the future of El Salvador? Are you excited about the prospects of that? I know some Bitcoiners are skeptical to have like a central citadel, but the project sounds amazing.
Bitcoin City, it's, as I understand it, it's a free enterprise zone. So there's no capital gains tax, there's no income tax, there's no payroll tax. And it will be, of course, on top of all the legislation and laws that are being rewritten in the securities front. That'll be all Bitcoin centric. So it's going to be a destination for people, I think, to start their companies, to relocate their companies, and something like a Singapore, for example, it just becomes a magnet for capital and for entrepreneurs. And I haven't heard a single person say anything negative about it. That's the first I've heard anyone say anything negative about it, because it's such an obviously good thing. But I mean, I have not heard a single naysayer.
But also, as Max mentioned, the president will be introducing a package of new laws in the next week, perhaps 2 weeks. And it's deep and comprehensive. Like, it's massive across the board, and it will, after this, you'll see what's going to happen. The entire economy, not just Bitcoin City, is going to become like a Singapore. This is going to happen within the next year. This is it's a radical transformation of the economy, and it's happening right now. As I think Jack Dorsey said something like that in an interview recently with Michael Saylor, is like, the future is happening right now in El Salvador, and it is. When you're here, you feel it and you know it. And this guy is serious, and he's committed to economic liberty. And you'll see. Watch what he does, not what people in the U.S. corporate media say. Just watch what he does, and you'll see for yourselves.
Actions speak louder than words, and I think you say it brilliantly, Stacy. We can't always just trust the source that we're receiving the information from. Let people's actions dictate how you feel and what you believe. I'd love, you guys have touched a little bit on some of the citizens discussing my hometown of Los Angeles, which is completely gone to shit. Citizens of here going back home. I'm curious, in those interactions, are these El Salvadorians who were born in El Salvador and immigrated at a later point, or were they born in America and have since gone back for a visit, just for like context purposes?
We've encountered both, but many who were born here and they go to America. That's like how people have lived here for the past few decades post-Civil War, is there's no opportunity here. A lot of the economy was based on a model of economic hitmen, essentially, which is that we take all your resources, including the most valuable of them, which is your human resources, the people, the brightest minds of your economy. We take them, bring them to America, and you get, the criminals we trained in our California prisons at like MS-13. So that's the trade that's been going on for the past few decades. And, the political situation has, they have a similar situation here up until President Bukele, similar to the United States, of two parties control everything and they pretend to be against each other, but really what they're doing is like dividing up the booty and like living like cantillionaires. So that is intentionally over. That system is over, where you want to return here now because the opportunity is here. Do you want to live amongst fecal matter in Los Angeles, or do you want to live where, with your coconuts and surfing and good times happening? The future is happening here. Jack Dorsey is telling you the future's happening here. What are you doing in Los Angeles?
I'm unfortunately here for the short term, but hopefully not for much longer. If only Bitcoin Magazine would send me on a one-way flight to El Salvador, I will be I will be there shortly. I want to also ask not only about El Salvadorians who maybe don't necessarily live, that makes up 3 million. El Salvador has just over 6 million citizens right now as well. Talk to us about the conversations about El Salvadorians who live in El Salvador around Bitcoin. What have those conversations been like? I know there have been some instances where there have been protests against this, whether that was purely out of not understanding the technology or whether that was out of something else completely. Would love your general thoughts on that.
Well, like anywhere else, the conversation runs the full spectrum. So you have people that are just finding out about it, people who are a bit into it, and people who are zealots. And all across the board, everyone we've met in the government is a Bitcoin maximalist, understands the technology profoundly, talks about the technology brilliantly, and they're very excited about it. The people on the street, again, you find those who are definitely into it. They talk about it. Then you have the curious. But the fact is that the population had 70% unbanked before Bitcoin, and now I think that's completely reversed. It's 70% is now banked thanks to Bitcoin. There are more Bitcoin wallets and users in El Salvador than there were users of the banking system in total combined with all banks in El Salvador. So there's been a complete flip in less than 6 months, and that's a remarkable transformation in less than 6 months. So within that group, you have people that they got their airdrop of Bitcoin and they're still checking it out, they're still looking at it, they're still finding out about it. I know that with groups like Swan Bitcoin, they are on the ground with education. So education is always appreciated. Bitcoin Magazine is always interested in doing education. And we're also interested in promoting education. There's the Hope House here in El Zonte, which is Bitcoin Beach, and they're constantly doing education and meetups. We've got Paxville in San Salvador. They just opened up a Bitcoin house. They're doing round-the-clock educational seminars. They're booked for weeks on end. People want to get there and get educated about it. So as you know, it's a virtuous cycle. Once you start thinking about Bitcoin, it changes the way you think about lots of stuff, and you want more and more and more, and then the community gets stronger and stronger, and so it's a virtuous cycle, and you see that playing out right here in a country that's made Bitcoin legal tender. So it's like a Bitcoin meetup times 1,000, powered by volcanoes, where you can go surfing.
And I would add as well that, yes, I think there were some protests in San Salvador, but again, that I think from my observation, it appears to just be politics. You don't want your opponent to succeed, right? In transforming the economy and turning it into the new Singapore, where you have presided over a dilapidated state where people flee for the past 30, 40 years. Why would you want to be exposed as a bad leader and a fraud that your parties were for decades, right? So that's just natural. On top of that, here in El Zonte, the fact that the banking system, as Max mentioned, 70% of the population here was unbanked. And that ironically kind of drove in Bitcoin Beach area, which is very famous for surfing. So you had a lot of tourists coming here solely for surfing over the past decades. And we spoke to a shop owner who she was telling us that, she ended up getting Bitcoin in her shop because she had so many Europeans here. And the Europeans would come and they had euros. there's no ATM because the banking system doesn't have ATMs provided for these sort of poor communities outside of the cities here. So there was no cash, and people would come in and want to pay for their food or coffee and from Europe, and all they would have is euros, and they didn't have any dollars. So she would have to say, well, you'd have to go to El Tunco, which is like 20 minutes away, and there's an ATM there. So she started to get asked, do you accept Bitcoin? How about Bitcoin? So that was like the fact that the banking system here was so crap is part of the reason why Bitcoin adoption was driven. And in terms of how the perception here, of course, this is Bitcoin Beach. Mike Peterson and Chimbetta, Roman Martinez and Jorge Valenzuela have done an amazing job, extreme education on the ground, helping people out here. So it's hyper Bitcoinized here. Like it's as a Bitcoiner for a long time, this is like a fantasy world here. You almost can't believe this is true, that you're not hallucinating, that it's just hyper Bitcoinized. There's no question, there's no explanation. You don't need to explain it. They just get it.
So what are some of the, what does that look like to someone who hasn't been to El Salvador yet? Are you seeing regular citizens continue to use Chivo? I haven't heard much from Chivo in a long time, so I'm wondering what are they using to facilitate Bitcoin in shops in and around El Salvador these days?
I'm using the Moon Wallet, M-U-U-N, the Moon Wallet, because it's just easy. The Chivo wallet is for citizens, so they're using that. I haven't used it. I'm not a citizen at this moment, not quite yet. So there's a plethora of different wallets being used, and people are very quick to use Bitcoin for payments because it's just really handy. People, tend to carry their phones around. They don't necessarily want to carry cash around. That's one thing. I mean, you're on the beach, and you go in the water. Your clothes are on the beach or what have you, and you want to leave a bunch of cash right there? No, it's it's perfect. You just have it locked up on your phone, and you can use it. So it's just very natural. At some point, what's going to happen in the world? And it happened when we saw the internet. The internet went from in 1996 when I started my .com company in Los Angeles, the Hollywood Stock Exchange. The internet was still a novelty. Paul Krugman was writing about it, that it wouldn't have any impact greater than the fax machine. And people were doubtful that the internet was actually going to succeed. And people were trying to grapple with well, how does it work? What's a packet? This is too complicated. And then it hits that inflection point, it becomes ubiquitous, and now we're in an internet world. So Bitcoin, similarly, what we're seeing here is what we're going to see in the rest of the world in a few years. That is, it's just accepted. People are not bogged down with trying to even know how it works or why it works. They just use it because it's part of the environment. It's part of the ecosystem. It becomes ubiquitous. It's as natural as using any other technology that becomes ingrained and inculcated in your day-to-day life. So that's what we're seeing right here. Bitcoin, hyper-Bitcoinization lives here.
I also want to add about Chivo. We have friends. I've actually made payments to friend on Chivo, both on chain and Lightning. So it worked instantly. They have hired a new Alpha Point, to come in and revamp everything. And one thing I've heard from people who use it is the remarkable thing is that there's zero commission. Like basically you're getting the spot price for Bitcoin. So when we get our citizenship and I could start to use it, I would consider that for the basically free trading. So it is, people have pointed out, Bitcoiners who I know have pointed out how remarkable that you can get this without zero commission, no spread, no nothing.
Yeah, and you're definitely starting to see now an impact on the remittance market. So $400 million a year in remittances, 10%, up to 10% of that or so would go to Western Union and other intermediaries. So that's $40 or $50 million now that's just going to go right into people's pockets. It's not going to go into the intermediaries. That's a big chunk of change. And so the whole dynamics and economics shift because Bitcoin is perfect money.
And one more thing is, I was actually part of that Lightning torch. So when back in the reckless days of Lightning, And everybody talks about lightning, it's debated all the time, and theoretical debates about whether or not it's work, is it possible, is this a joke, blah, blah, blah. Well, like, it's used everywhere here in El Zonte. It's ubiquitous. So it's like, it's not theoretical here. It just is. And so it's amazing to walk into a world off of Bitcoin Twitter and step into the future that many say can't exist, but it's actually happening right here.
I love that. I mean, it's truly inspiring to see the playbook being written. Someone needs to do it, and you guys are helping leading that charge. And I personally want to thank you for that, for spreading the word and making sure we are humanizing what's going on down there, because it can be very easily manipulated and people could just be spun out, as we see very quickly and very easily.
Well, this is my reward for being a Bitcoin maximalist. You know, I've had to fight the shitcoins for 11 years. And so now I'm living on the beach in tropical paradise in Bitcoin hyper-Bitcoinization, watching on my Twitter stream all these shitcoiners go down in flames. And, you know, this is Satoshi's rewarding me. I'm living in Satoshi heaven.
Max, I want to give you an opportunity, if you are up for it, to essentially call out any of these shit coins and any of their holders. Give them one reason as to why to switch from that shit coin to Bitcoin.
Well, if it's not Bitcoin, it's centralized garbage, either relatively or absolutely. It's not secure. You know, Ether can be shut off in a heartbeat. It's all on corporate clusters and servers, and if the government wanted to either A, classify it as a security, or B, consider it a security risk in some way, they could simply turn it off. And that everything tied to it, NFTs, you know, all that garbage. And then it gets worse from there.
Imagine if El Salvador had chosen any of the shitcoins, anyone, think of them, any of the thousands instead of Bitcoin. And
Right.
then he had been like to the IMF, we don't give a fuck. Any of that stuff, like any of how he responds to these institutions who think they know better for what's good for El Salvador than the president does. So what would they do? Like the heads of all, the leader of any of those shitcoins would be contacted by the US Department of Justice or the IMF or any of these institutions, and they would say, hey, unplug El Salvador from your coin. And they'd be like, okay, please, I'll do it for you. Just leave me alone. So, you know, Bitcoiners, we could just, we're the warriors. We're the only warriors out there.
We are the only ones who truly can see the light and are reading between the lines. You bring up, Max, the most important point about Bitcoin versus anything else, which is the centralization of everything else and the decentralized aspect of Bitcoin and the sheer benefit of that. We've witnessed just north of the border here in America, the Canadian trucker protests get shut down, centralized entities that are controlling the money or collecting the money, the government stepping in and telling them what they can and can't do with that. Bitcoin fixes this, Bitcoin solves this. I'd love to hear your thoughts, both of you, on Russia's recent announcement about pushing forward to legalize Bitcoin and what that may have as far as an impact on the global Bitcoin scale.
Well, the two words, game theory. So Russia is smart enough to respect game theory, whereas China, maybe not so much. That's why China got rid of their miners, because I think China's leadership is very arrogant and they think they're above game theory. Russian leadership is very pragmatic and they see game theory playing out. They realize that what happened to the truckers and the centralized payment systems, to give one example, or to Julian Assange when they cut off from MasterCard, Visa, and PayPal, or when they sanctioned Iran over the SWIFT system, they're like, we have to create our own system for redundancy. And now, after a few years, they realize that, well, actually now it's obvious that Bitcoin in this winner-take-all hard money global race for perfect money is the winner. So we're adjusting our thinking, right? They're not ideologues. They're not dictators. They're not stupid. I mean, they go with the flow, and they see that Bitcoin is emerging as the world global reserve asset, and they're making adjustments accordingly. It's the country has a lot of different constituents, and they're all battling for a voice in the Kremlin. And it's not like the president can just write a dictate. It's not what people perceive it to be. They have to go through a political process, and they've been moving this political process along for a while. Obviously, on Keiser Report, we've been talking about it for 10 years. We've never heard any word ever suggesting we should stop talking about Bitcoin. That was my clue that there was light at the end of this tunnel, that it was all political nonsense. And sure enough, I was right again.
Yeah, also, like think of how a chess player operates. If you know you're going to lose your queen by making a move, why you don't do it, right? Why would you make that move? It's not we don't have any special insight. We just have our own brains and our understanding of game theory. Look at any of the words that he himself, Putin, mentioned over the previous 5 years. Only like 2 or 3 times was he asked about Bitcoin, but he revealed that he understood it profoundly. He knows what it is. So when people were shouting and screaming and shrieking in our direct messages and stuff like that over the past a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, saying Russia's about to ban Bitcoin because the central bank, Elvira, wants to ban Bitcoin, I was like, why would Putin do something? Why would he make a move that he knows he can't win? Like, he knows you can't ban Bitcoin, so why would he announce, I'm going to ban Bitcoin? Oops, it failed. He's going to instead look at it and say, well, because I can't ban it, I'm going to pretend I'm legalizing it. It's like, okay, buddy. Like, you couldn't ban it anyway. So, like, I think that's more the situation that happened. He's just smart enough to know he can't ban it and that he's going to need it. He sees that he needs it. He sees the sanctioning, as Max mentioned, back to the days of when Obama first pulled Iran off SWIFT. That was the weaponization of the dollar. Like, it had always been kind of like right before pre-weaponization, but that was when it got weaponized, and that's when that was the end of the dollar, essentially, because even Germany started to work on an alternative to SWIFT.
So I have a twofold follow-up question. I guess first, yeah, as you've mentioned, Bitcoin obviously benefits early adopters and punishes laggards by way of they'll get in at a higher price. It's not really a question of if, they'll have to get in eventually. So my first question would be, like, who are the next nation states that you have your eyes on? And then outside of this, I would love to hear, Max, your take on the Russia-Ukraine situation that's been all over the news. What the heck is going on there?
Right. So on the adoption of different countries, and also the comment about the early adopters benefit and the later adopters are not necessarily benefiting, I think that deserves some comments, because ultimately Bitcoin demonetizes war and monetizes peace. So we're all equally benefiting if we have global Bitcoinization by a world that love and peace have been monetized. And the actual orientation toward money, scarcity, hoarding, wealth is fundamentally changed. And I think that's going to be a big bonus for our whole species, to be frank. Now, if you look at which countries are in line to adopt Bitcoin, you have Central America and Africa are the two most active parts of the world. Central America, obviously, with El Salvador, you have 5 countries in Central America. They're talking to each other all the time. There's been a dream now for 150 years of unifying these 5 countries. That's now back in play. People are talking about it again. Bitcoin could be the standard for the entire region. We've got now the billionaires in Mexico are promoting Bitcoin heavily. Mexico is in play. Argentina is in play, with Strike is now in Argentina like they were in El Salvador. So Latin America, Central America, definitely Bitcoin adoption is exploding. And over in Africa, in Nigeria, you know, Ray over at Paxville has done an incredible job in orange pilling that entire continent, really. And that's spreading all over Africa. It's because the use case, well, Bitcoin in Africa is incredible. You know, these countries couldn't converse with each other before Bitcoin, because even though they might be two miles away, you couldn't do any commercial activity with all these different countries because they were so balkanized financially. You know, imagine if you couldn't do business with New Jersey and New York and Connecticut and Long Island, you couldn't do business together because you were completely separate financial systems and different regulations. So Bitcoin breaks that apart, and for the continent of Africa, it's incredibly entrepreneurial, and now they've got perfect money. So we're going to see an incredible move there. So those are the two biggest hot zones. As far as what's going on between Russia and Ukraine, you know, obviously, it's very similar to me to this recurring pantomime where every 6 months or so we hear about the Fed is going to raise rates, right? For 25 years, the Fed's going to raise rates. And of course, they can't raise rates because you can't taper a Ponzi scheme. But people will always get all worried about, oh, they're going to raise rates. And of course, now we're at the point now in that cycle where they're starting to say, actually, we think we might need to launch QE5. We might have to lower rates. Japan just actually did a massive QE program, as I understand it. So they're already engaged in QE. And on a net basis, the central banks have been continuing in their program of buying their own debt monetization globally at an extraordinary rate. So there's been no diminishment in the money printing in the QE at all, and that never is going to change. And so Russia, Ukraine is similar. So here, I don't want to shock anybody with my realpolitik, but this is what actually happens. So you have QE and you have money printing, and these are the primary ways that the dollar is debased. The cantillionaires become billionaires and cantillionaires, and America goes down the shithole, as we've seen now since 1971, since we went off the gold standard. But there's another way that you can print lots of money, and that is you do this whole pantomime and fan dance with, oh, Russia is going to invade Ukraine. Oh no! We need the Pentagon, which already gets 1.5 trillion of our tax dollars, 50 cents of every tax dollar. They say, send us another 200 billion today, or Russia's going to invade Ukraine. So they go, okay, you got it. And then that's just money printing. And then it never goes into the economy. It stays in the banks. They hoard the money. We know this because money velocity is at zero. So it's just more money printing. It's another bailout. The U.S. mainstream media is an extension of Raytheon and Boeing. They have no independence whatsoever. It's pure government-controlled media in America. There is no, except for Joe Rogan, and of course they need to get rid of Joe Rogan because he's the only independent voice in America. We need to shut him down because we can then see that Rachel Maddow is whoring for rocket sellers, for bomb manufacturers, right? She's on TV exposing herself for weapons dealers, right? So that's just more bailout. So it's bullshit. In the next 2 days, the whole thing's going to fizzle out, as it always does, and they'll have some other crisis. It'll be China. It'll be some new terrorist organization. It'll be, whatever it is. It's the same script over and over again. It's like being trapped on Gilligan's Island for 30 years. The same cast, the same stories, the same stupid shit over and over and over again. At least write different stories. You're so boring.
Exactly.
It's so boring. Come up with some different propaganda. Don't give me the same propaganda every day. I mean, go to Hollywood, hire some writers, and get some good propaganda. You're so boring.
What is Confucius's definition for insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
That was
Einstein. My apologies.
Confucius said, "Don't misquote Einstein, or you look foolish."
I will. I got to take that one to the bank.
I tell you, Einstein also said one of the most powerful forces in the universe is compounded interest. You look at Bitcoin, it's been compounding interest at over 100% a year for 12, 13 years. So that's what makes it. That's why Peter Schiff looks like such a stupid fucking jackass, because he doesn't understand how technology is expanding on a functionality of exponential growth. He's still thinking like gold. He's a gold guy. So he's got a shovel and he digs a hole and he puts a gold and he goes to the bank and he sticks it in a vault and then he forgets about it. That's a very linear, there's no exponential function in gold. It's very linear. It can never ever expand faster than the rate of inflation. You're never going to beat inflation with gold. You might keep up with inflation, but although that hasn't happened in the last 5 or 6 years, but 10 years, but 10 years gold's been down 1%. I think Bitcoin's up 400,000%, and Peter Schiff is doing a victory lap. Right? So whatever meds he's on, either take more, take less, or get off those drugs. Whatever the situation is, but whatever the drug is, it's not working.
It's just that complacency, man. It's like there's some people, I think, if you don't have the ability to admit that you're wrong, I think it becomes very difficult to adopt Bitcoin. It requires that that you accept that you fundamentally didn't understand how money works. And it's kind of wonderful.
I blame Joe Rogan. I blame Joe Rogan because he has Peter Schiff on like 3 times. Every 6 to 9 months he has Peter Schiff on. Has Michael Saylor been on Joe Rogan? No. Has any three
Max
or
Keiser?
I haven't been on Joe. Okay.
Andreas Antonopoulos has been on.
Andreas was on like 7 or 8 years ago. Yeah. But that was a completely different era. I think in the Michael Saylor era, you've got now a whole new crop of communicators or influencers, if you will. And Michael Saylor would be a great Joe Rogan guest, or Jack Dorsey is the great Joe Rogan guest, right? So where's Joe Rogan on this? He shares some responsibility for this. Yeah. Joe.
He had Adam Curry was the most recent one, and he definitely knows who you and Saylor are. And let's get Max and Saylor both on Joe
Adam
Rogan.
Curry on Bitcoin originally.
Yeah.
We got him to be a maximalist in Bitcoin, so he's very grateful for that. We orange pilled Safe Dina Moose. Safe Dina Moose was a shitcoin hater. And then, as he readily admits, we orange-pilled him.
He was a hater of Bitcoin.
Yeah, hater of Bitcoin. And the list of people is quite lengthy.
Well, I don't know if he was actually a hater of Bitcoin, but he was skeptical.
Skeptic, yeah, okay.
He was a Bitcoin bug. He was a
gold bug.
Sorry.
Let me ask the two of you this, because and if you saw Bitcoin and it made sense from day one, I myself had certain reservations when I first learned about it that it took some time for me to get over. Those initial moments when you first learned about Bitcoin, was there any sort of block or hurdle you had to get over?
For me, I'm basically a megalomaniac. So in 1996, I tried to take over Hollywood with the Hollywood Stock Exchange. So I invented a virtual currency, virtual securities, and a virtual market maker. And I was trying to grab the entire Hollywood industry by introducing trading on their assets on an exchange called the Hollywood Stock Exchange, to essentially create a commercial entity that would be up and running for a year before their movies opened. And by the time their movies opened, they would almost be a non-event. So like Godzilla Part 4 would be on HSX for a year or two, and we'd be trading it aggressively based on future box office, et cetera. Same thing for all the stars. And because HSX was centralized, the studios killed it. And I sold out my stock because I had a falling out with the board, and I moved to France. And when Bitcoin came around in 2011, I'm like, oh, this is great because nobody can kill it, and it's going to take over the world.
When we found it in 2011, that's when we first covered it, early 2011.
Yeah, in 2011, we discovered it. It was $1. And as it was explained to me by John Matonis, I immediately figured this is going to take over the world, but you can't kill it. It's uncensorable, unconfiscatable, it's immortal. It's immortal, perfect money. It appeals to the basest human instinct of greed, and it triggers infinite human demand. Nothing else triggers infinite human demand. Not gold, not fiat, not even sex. There's only one thing that triggers infinite human demand, and that is Bitcoin. That's why it's going to continue to go up, because humans, it's insatiable. They can never, ever get enough Bitcoin.
Just look at Michael Saylor.
Just look at Michael Saylor. I see him shaking down kids at the schoolyard to get their Bitcoin. He's like, kid, give me your lunch money. I want to buy more Bitcoin. You know, the guy is out there committing petty larceny so he can get more money to buy Bitcoin. He's become a Bitcoin addict. He needs to go to Bitcoin Anonymous.
For me, I think, you know, my journey was a little bit longer just because in the early days, so we were at that first Bitcoin conference, and it was like all of the, you know, the autistic sort of coders, like they were all coders, tech guys, hackers. And for the first few years, I thought more of Bitcoin as like it was a technology, and the people like Mike Hearn and Gavin Andreessen, when they're rage quitting, like that this is a technology, and all the technologists, the coders, are abandoning it. And that to me was like, I didn't realize just that, you know, like with Nick Bhatia's book Layered Money, that this was the third ever layer one money. Like I didn't understand, like it was money, it wasn't technology at that time. So, and that really only like totally solidified for me, like completely, in March of 2020 during the pandemic, remember when Bitcoin fell down to 3,000, but the money printing and the extraordinary lockdown of the global economy, it just like, something happened. You see that in the entire Bitcoin community, by the way. Not only did it, that moment, bring in the likes of Paul Tudor Jones, who's one of the smartest hedge fund managers out there, but also Michael Saylor was drawn into Bitcoin at that time. So we skipped like into another dimension at that moment. Something happened, and it also happened for me. I mean, obviously I was like already a Bitcoiner and a maximalist, but there was like no going back. There was like zero doubt, and all doubt was removed from my mind that this had anything to do with technology, that it was just pure money.
Yeah, well, I think at around block 300,000, Bitcoin became self-aware. And what Stacy is commenting on is that she started to understand Bitcoin as a living organism, and it spoke to her.
True.
I love that. That's very beautifully said, and thank you both for sharing those stories with us. I do want to present you guys a question, and forgive the ignorance on my end, but can you touch on if El Salvador is self-custodying their own Bitcoin, and why or why not?
We don't know. We don't have that sort of access where they're going to tell us that. So I do hope. I assume they have multi-sig, and I know that the president is very smart, and he reads Bitcoin Twitter. He's a member of Bitcoin Twitter, and just I think enough people, smart people, tweeting at him. He learns from that. So I'm assuming he knows best practices, just because the man I met is smart. So I'm assuming, but I cannot verify.
No problem at all. We wanted to ask, but
there's also like the question, Q, of like, it becomes complicated when you're an institution. Like as a citizen of El Salvador, you want this one man walking around with your keys? Like it has to be some kind of almost like a commercial multi-signature solution. I can't think of another way to do it safely.
Multiple key holders.
Yeah,
makes sense.
I'm assuming that's the sort of thing they have, but I'm not sure that they would publicize it. I don't know. I don't know. The answer is I don't know.
Maybe honestly, and Max and Stacy, I'm gonna give you guys a little homework, but to your point, Alex, self-custody is like for the self, for the individual. Maybe as more nation states and as more corporations begin to hold it, we need to come up with a new terminology for what that actually is in regard to Bitcoin, and make a Bitcoin word for it. So I leave it in the hands of everyone watching and listening too. Feel free to tweet at us and let us know what you think could be a good word for nation states holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet.
Exactly. Come up with a word, come up with a plan, tweet your plan, and tag the president. And hopefully, he'll see it. Maybe he's already done it. Like, I'm assuming the guy's already like 10 steps ahead of everybody else. Maybe he's already, he's laughing at us trying to figure out what he's already figured out.
President Bukele, if you are watching this, hello. Thank you for doing God's work down in El Salvador. Max, I do want to ask you and Stacy as well. I will say personally, watching you come on that stage last year at the conference in your white suit, cursing up a storm at anyone who frankly deserved it, really sat with me well, and I enjoyed hearing what you and Michael were talking about. I'd love to maybe hear from you what you're most excited for beyond Bukele's announcement that will be happening at the conference. Is there anything else that you're excited for Bitcoin 22?
Yeah, we were talking to the Bitcoin 22 organizers last week, and they said they loved my chat with Michael Saylor, and they said, is there any way you can increase the intensity? And I said, yeah, absolutely. You know, David Bailey is giving me the green light to try to levitate that auditorium and cause an outright riot, which I'm happy to do. So that's my goal. That's what I'll be focusing on.
I kind of heard a different conversation. I think it was the exact opposite, but let's see. In terms of what I expect from Bitcoin 2022, I can't wait for President Bukele to be on stage, because I think this is going to be a genuine rock star moment. I can't wait for everybody in America and around the world who travel to Miami for this to see him speak and to witness him in person. I think it's going to be amazing, and I know many Congress people, politicians, all sorts of people, thinkers, big names here in El Salvador are going to be there. So I think it's going to be Salvadoran. I think maybe you need a pupusa stand for sure over there at Bitcoin 2022. If you haven't already planned that, I think Bitcoin Magazine needs to make sure that happens, because there will be many people missing their pupusas. We can't just have Cubanos and tacos. We need some pupusas.
True.
I am adding that to the notes, and I've already sent it to the organizers as well. I have already booked my flight to El Salvador, so I will be there late April now. So Alex, heads up, you might need some more vacation time.
Yes.
Hey.
I do want to present. I know I don't want to be steal your guys' time too much. I know you have a lot of stuff going on in El Salvador.
We have some surfing to do. The waves are huge. I don't know if you can hear it.
Yeah, the waves are calling me.
Well, I do want to let you guys then get back in the water. I am so jealous. I'm so jealous, to be quite honest. But please make sure you guys check out the Keiser report. Where else should our viewers and followers be watching and looking out for anything else that you guys are working on?
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/orange pill. Join our Telegram group, t.me/orange pill. And of course, follow us on Twitter. Follow me first, because I'm Stacy Herbert, StacyHerbert, and I only have like a third of the followers, or a fourth of the followers that he does.
A third.
So I need more to catch up to him.
So it sounds like a little competition. We need to help Stacy out, guys. Everyone needs to go smash.
Well, going back a few years, Stacy had about 2,000 followers back in the year 2009. And I was like, oh wow, what is this Twitter thing? I can't let Stacy get all these followers. So I entered the arena.
There was a point when I had more followers than Max did.
You did, yeah.
So it was pretty cool.
So anyway, yeah, follow Stacy for sure, because her Twitter feed is actually full of useful things. My Twitter feed tends to be useless. There's just a lot of shit posting and vendettas. I like to post a lot of vendettas against people that I haven't seen in 40 years, but I assume they're out there. So I just do cryptic vendettas that make no sense.
I had my best moment in all my years since 2009 on Twitter yesterday. I was so happy when Adam Back jumped into my conversation with Alex Gladstein about President Bukele, and Adam Back himself agreed with what I was saying, which was that you must give the president credit for an amazing thing he did, and there's nobody else who could take credit. It was President Bukele and perhaps his brothers together with this idea of Bitcoin, and they implemented it with the best people around them. They chose the best people. They didn't choose any crap people, and they did it themselves. It was nobody influencing them to do this. It was just them. So I think Adam backed me on this, and I think that fact of delivering an amazing tool for economic freedom and liberty and freedom from censorship and giving people their sovereignty is just at odds with the story that some, like Alex Gladstein, like to say. He's a friend. I consider him a friend, a good friend. So we disagree on this issue, and I believe that you just need to look at the actions, and you'll see even more coming up in the next week or two. I think you'll see the results. And you come here. Everybody should come to El Zante. Everybody should go to San Salvador. You should talk to the people who actually their lives have been transformed by Bitcoin. And they're Salvadorans, and let them tell their story. And I think you'll find it's quite different from what you might find in Reuters or on CNN.
Absolutely. I'm going to keep hammering this point home. This is the theme for today's episode, guys. Actions speak louder than words. Let people follow through on their actions and let that speak for itself. I also want to highlight one thing because, Max, you did such an incredible job. I know you have another one coming out. But in the most recent issue of Bitcoin Magazine with the gentleman from El Salvador on the cover, check out Max's overdose article. Truly brilliant. I know you shout out, not kindly, but one of your favorite people whose initials are MN. I want to give you the soapbox for the last segment. I know there are a lot of people you like to call out. We called out Peter Schiff, MN, Musk last year. Any one of your choosing. It doesn't even have to be one of those three. It could be David Bailey if you'd like. Feel free. You have 30 seconds to call him out and say what you'd like.
Oh, on Valentine's Day, I want to keep it all about love. And, we don't need to get all nasty on Valentine's Day. Let's all just join hands and get naked and have sex. I will say that my observation about the Bitcoin blockchain is that it is synchronizing a global orgasm. So at some point, we're going to see 7 million or 7 billion people come together, literally.
All right.
That's dead air. That's dead air pause right there.
Because we're laughing.
It's the love explosion. The love explosion, right? And then Satoshi.
That's more poetic.
Satoshi will reveal himself. The reason why Satoshi is anonymous is because he's coming from the future. So when we cross the Bitcoin singularity, when we have that massive orgasm, when we all come together on block number like 820,000, Satoshi reveals himself, and we see that it's the second coming of Satoshi.
Thank you, Max. I needed to start my Monday off laughing that hard. Thank you.
You laugh now, sucker. You'll see. I'm right. You'll see. You'll see I'm right.
Max Keiser is always right. You heard
Have
it
I
here
steered you
first.
wrong?
You have not. You have not. Guys, this has been far too much fun. I want to let you get
Michael Saylor said I'm the high priest of Bitcoin. You gonna doubt Michael Saylor? Are you gonna say no to Michael Saylor? Giga Chad?
Max, it is an absolute pleasure. Stacy, thank you so much. You guys are too kind to take your time, chat with a couple of us here at Bitcoin Magazine Live. Go back to surfing, go back to enjoying El Salvador and preaching the good word of Satoshi to everyone who needs to hear it.
Peace. Have a nice Valentine's Day.
Peace, y'all.
Happy
Filled with
Valentine's
love
Day,
and
y'all.
hope.
You too. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. Enjoy the waves.
Alrighty. Bye now.
We're going to cut to a quick commercial break, guys. And when we're back, we'll continue the conversation and also chat a little bit about the Bitcoin Bowl yesterday. Are you interested in exploring the many worlds of Bitcoin with thought leaders from the space? How about meeting Bitcoiners from your city and throughout the US? Maybe you're seeking an exciting new job with a Bitcoin company. What about orange pilling your best friend? This is what Bitcoin Day is all about. Curious Bitcoiners coming together, learning, sharing, and talking Bitcoin all day long. Bitcoin Day events have limited seats, so you don't get lost in the crowd, but rather have meaningful interactions with speakers and participants. Learn about personal and financial sovereignty, security, privacy mining, the Lightning Network, and many other topics. The next Bitcoin Day will be held in Sacramento on February 19th, so book your tickets at bitcoinday.io before the event is sold out. Everyone deserves a Bitcoin Day.
All right, that's coming up quick here, guys. Get your tickets for Bitcoin Day just at the end of the week here, 5 days out. Other thing I just wanted to take a moment to remind y'all of, I think we're 50 something days out from the Bitcoin 2022 conference. Max and Stacy are going to be there. I'm going to be there. Q is, of course, going to be there. Everyone in Bitcoin is pretty much going to be there. So get your tickets now. We've got a special going on for you guys, 10% off your tickets. Promo code YTMAG. You can use the link at the bottom of the description of the video. That's YTMAG for 10% off all of your Bitcoin conference tickets. That's if you want a whale pass, if you just want to come to the Sound Money Music Festival, Industry Day, the regular conference days, 10% off all of that. And yeah, outside of that, this is going to be the the biggest party and networking event of the year in fintech or otherwise. We're expecting 35,000 plus people. I mean, the numbers are just climbing. We've got people buying tickets as we're live on air here. So yeah, it's a great opportunity to network. If I know I saw a couple people in the chat saying they were looking to, they hate their jobs, this and that. Like if you're looking to leave your fiat job, this is a great opportunity. A lot of companies are made, relationships formed, and yeah, there's a lot of job opportunities to be found just in the sheer number of like-minded individuals that are going to be in one place at one time. So be sure to get your tickets. Q, I didn't know if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone, and for those who maybe haven't heard, specific to jobs, um, the industry day. So the industry pass specifically, as well as the whale pass, gets you into the industry day. And we're hosting a job fair. And the companies that are going to have booths throughout, as well as some of our sponsors, are essentially hosting this job fair to share what jobs they have at a Bitcoin company. And I want to emphasize this because sometimes people get confused and lost. These are not all technical developer coding type jobs. There are sales positions, there are marketing positions, there are corporate communications positions. Heck, we just hired someone at Bitcoin Magazine at HR. These businesses have other roles than just technical stuff. So don't be discouraged if that's not your forte or that's not your skill set. There's a job for everyone in Bitcoin. And I highly recommend being there for the job fair at Industry Day so you can show face, shake some hands, and put a face to your name on that resume. I also want to just emphasize the fact that Max Keiser had an absolute ball with us for the last hour on stage last year with Michael Saylor. It was a party with him on it. If he even ramps it up just 10%, like you're just going to get high hearing him talk, and that energy is going to be infectious. You're going to want to be there when President Bukele makes that announcement. I don't want to spoil any future guests, but we will be sort of having some of these guests as well coming on, and we'll be chatting with them a little bit. So be sure to like and subscribe to the channel as well to get a little bit of exclusive content as far as some interviews with upcoming speakers from the conference. You're not going to want to miss what we're cooking up over here, and you're not going to miss what we cook up in Miami in 2 months, guys. So be sure to use code YTMAG.
Exciting stuff. Just to round out the week here, I believe we have Jameson Lopp coming on Wednesday. We've got a great episode of Fed Watch. You've got segments of the Breakup today and tomorrow, fan favorite, and we've got the deep dive with Dylan LeClaire later in the week. Outside of that, there's going to be no show Thursday, just a heads up, but you can tune in tomorrow at probably about 1:45 Eastern. We'll get started a little later than usual tomorrow, but we'll be sure to give out some Bitcoin as well. We're going to give out Bitcoin throughout the rest of this show. download the Carrot app, Earn Carrot, earncarrot.com, and have your phones ready to plug in some codes we're going to display on screen, as well as drop in the comments on Twitch and YouTube. So really happy to give away some Bitcoin, and I think we're gonna have some more interactive Bitcoin earning opportunities for you guys in the future. Besides that, there will also be Bitcoin earning opportunities at the conference. So, come bring some kind of hot wallet. Don't bring your real wallet, but spin up a new wallet just for the conference to be safe. Come and win some sats, spend some sats. Get your pupusas. It's gonna be great.
I do want to maybe use that as an opportunity to switch on what I would like to talk about before we go over to the breakup segment, which is scanning a QR code on a screen in the middle of the Super Bowl. Yet again, Coinbase's app crashed. They spent about $7 billion for a 30-second ad spot, or 7 million, sorry, 7 million, only to have a QR code on the screen. Brilliant advertising. Everyone at the Super Bowl party I was at was, what is this? What is this? Oh, it's something crypto. Q, what is this? And sure enough, as I log on to Coinbase to enter my 15 million, whatever the raffle prize was, it crashed. Alex, I don't know if you were watching or if you caught that live, or what your thoughts on that are.
My thoughts are, I've never watched a game of football in my life. That remains the case. I don't care how many crypto ads they're gonna put in the Super Bowl. I'll watch a good halftime show. I heard the halftime show is interesting.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, guys. Coinbase will fail you every time. Get the fuck off Coinbase. Use Strike, like if you can. I think Strike's only available in like 2 countries right now. Strike, open up worldwide. Use Strike, use Cash App. If you're in the States, it's a great place to buy Bitcoin. You can use Swan Bitcoin. I don't know if you can use Swan internationally, but those are some great exchanges. The problem specifically with Coinbase is it's going to lead you and tempt you. It's going to show you this bay of green crypto like shit coins, which fair enough. I mean, if you want a shit coin, like, go do your thing, but they're totally uncorrelated and price wise, they are actually really tight. They live or die on Bitcoin's coattails, but they're unnecessary. They're a distraction. I think they're a terrible investment. So it's easier to just stick to platforms that actually understand Bitcoin. I mean, Coinbase doesn't even hold that much Bitcoin in their corporate treasury. They clearly don't understand the asset that they hold. It's disingenuous to put it on there next to all these other cryptocurrencies. It encourages people to trade and think in a high time preference, like speculative gambling manner. And I think the most amount of people succumb to this kind of high time preference limbic like way of thinking. And it's like, no, I want you to use your cerebral cortex, like plan for the future. This is what distinguishes us from animals. Don't gamble with your Bitcoin. Don't trade your Bitcoin. Simply buy and hold and go to the exchanges that are going to help you understand the most secure ways to do that. I've listed some of them. Depending on your country, there are many others. It's just like an ever evolving game of like cat and mouse. You have to always improve your security. This is the trade-off for really actually owning property. You have to defend that wealth that you have accrued and stored in Bitcoin, and you have to learn about ways to do it. So I think like using proper exchanges for Bitcoin goes a long way into doing that. I don't know if you had any comments on that, Q. No, sorry, that was like quite a rant. But when I see, that's literally what I think when I see those crypto ads. I was like, oh, all these people are going to be led into the abyss and they're going to lose their ass.
You're absolutely right, and I will actually share the conversation that I had at the Super Bowl party I was at, because I, unlike Alex, frankly watched far too much football. I watched far too much sports, but that's just because I'm an addict in that realm and space. But the conversation was, how often do I use Coinbase? Do I use FTX and some of these other platforms? And then in particular, I had actually, at the same group of friends at a Friendsgiving, I suggested and convinced a handful of them who had Cash App to buy just $20 of Bitcoin right then and there. Most of them haven't even looked at it. Most of them haven't bought more. They haven't sold it either. But then they asked me, because I brought up I use Strike. They asked me, like, why did you have us buy on Cash App? And I said to them, well, friction. You already had it on your phone, and most of your friends do. And so for me, when I'm trying to convince someone to buy their first Bitcoin, it's a lot easier if I say, hey, that app that's already on your phone, that's already linked to your bank account, that you already use from time to time, just go $20 right now, or I'll send you $20 of Bitcoin, whatever you want. But it's an easier way, and it decreases that friction versus having to download a new app. To your point,
In line just with that, I haven't verified the source, but Blockworks just tweeted out that Ted Cruz, the koala bear looking senator, has been buying Bitcoin every week for several months. That's amazing. That's great to hear. That's dollar cost averaging. I mean, that's the way to do it. Just like smooth your volatility. Just keep on it, keep buying. You can buy. I mean, I think like the better strategy is actually like allocate whatever percentage of your portfolio you're comfortable into Bitcoin. Like do that all at once, and just like strap in for the ride, and then slowly increase your position daily or weekly or monthly, just to go back to the fundamentals here.
Well, absolutely. And I do want to also sort of highlight what you had brought up about like the shit coinery that ensues when you just have all of those options. And I am so adamant personally when I talk to friends and people I'm trying to educate on Bitcoin, where I say, like, just learn about Bitcoin. Focus on Bitcoin right now, because the other stuff, there are technological benefits. However, if you don't really understand what these components are doing, and you don't understand sort of the pros and cons, you yourself can't weigh that risk. And someone can just tell you, well, this shitcoin is better for this one reason only, whereas there are 8 other reasons that are also just as valid, that is not better than Bitcoin or whatever other shitcoin or whatever. So I say spending the time on Bitcoin helps you better understand the broader markets. But then when you go onto these platforms that offer you everything under the sun, all they want is your fees. They just want to collect fees. They want to up their user base. Coinbase is publicly traded. FTX will be listed and publicly traded. They're focused on their quarterly earning reports. They need to show user growth. They need to show that the cost per user is increased, or profit per user is increasing as well. Don't believe that a company that is rooted in a fiat system and benefits from the fiat monetary process has your best interest in mind. That's just my personal belief on it. Maybe Max has rubbed off a little bit on me after that conversation, but I do want to highlight that in particular. They'll say what they want. Actions speak louder than words. I do want to go back though to the Super Bowl, because while Alex may not have watched it, 50 million other Americans and people around the world did. And for some time now, Bitcoin and crypto has become nomenclature. We are talking about it regularly. You have mainstream media discussing the price of Bitcoin, whether it goes up or down, in the same way that they talk about the US stock market and the NASDAQ going up or down. But you now have crypto.com arena. We have FTX, crypto.com arena here in Los Angeles. You have FTX arena, made about 6 or 8 months ago down in Miami. They took those naming rights. You have different advertisements all over the NBA as well, on jerseys, on courts and whatnot. Coinbase famously has court signage on most NBA stadiums. Now you have Super Bowl advertisements going into place. You have, fine, we're going to say a bad word on the show for a moment, but bear with me here. We also have the Cash App Twitter campaigns last night, and all throughout sporting events all year. Every single time a different athlete or famous person essentially says, I'm taking part of my salary in Bitcoin. But what you are seeing is this groundswell of just pure marketing dollars getting poured into an industry like crypto, Bitcoin, whatever it is still a net positive. You are bringing awareness. You are having a conversation in the middle of a Super Bowl party about Bitcoin and crypto. That doesn't happen a year ago. That doesn't happen 5 years ago. So we are seeing the steps taken. It may literally be one of those instances where we take one step forward and 2 steps back, unfortunately, because it's not Bitcoin. They're talking crypto. However, it is still going to push us in the right direction, because people are going to start asking questions. People are now going to be more curious. It's going to continue to push the whole overall market forward, and eventually cream rises to the top. And as more people become aware, as more people get involved in these markets, they will start to see the shitcoins for what they are. And hopefully Bitcoin will continue to reign supreme and potentially be the last man standing.
Hopefully. Absolutely. No question. What's up, Nolan? We're joined today by Nolan. I don't know if he's quite ready yet. We'll give him a second. We'll play an advertisement real quick. Before that, I would urge all of you to go get your Bitcoin 2022 tickets right now. Go do it today. Or, wait till after Nolan's segment and then go do it. But you get 10% off with the promo code YTMAG. Going to be really excited to see you all there. Be awesome to, shoot some short interviews or content with everybody. So please come out to the conference. Excited to see you there. I'm going to hop off, guys.
Welcome back, everyone, and we're joined by Nolan for another episode of the Breakup. Nolan, how
Hey,
you doing,
everyone.
man?
I love life. What a weekend. What a time. So today's show comes to you in the full quantum of, I don't know the result of my subjects today. So we're going to talk about inflation, Ukraine, and truckers. There's stuff happening as we speak. So it's actually kind of fun, the Schrodinger cat aspect of it all, because I get to make predictions in real time and you can actually check them when we're done. So you can see how accurate things are. So this show is all about relationships. It's all about our relationship with money, and it's about breaking up with those relationships that aren't fruitful for money, right? Not every relationship we have is fruitful, and not everything is going to help us get to where we want to go. So today, with all that's going on in the world, the stories that we're going to be covering, with the Fed secret meeting, with Ukrainian press conference about to happen, with Trudeau in Canada and the convoy invoking emergency measures in order to take the money. All of these aspects fall into one really important propaganda tool, and that's what I want to talk about today. And it was actually the Super Bowl ad from last night, the FTX Super Bowl ad, that had me think about this as a subject for today. So I'm sure a lot of people have been talking about this FTX ad today, but I want to just tee it up from my perspective to show you why it was important, why it was significant, and why it actually suggested that we're getting over this terrible affliction we have with this propaganda tool called the Gelman amnesia effect, which we're going to discuss. So why and how was the FTX ad related to Gelman amnesia effect? Well, the FTX ad with Larry David showed a person throughout different times in history, an Egyptian saying what a stupid idea that wheel is. And then he was a monk who said what a dumb idea a fork is. And then, he said you can't go to the moon, and a dishwasher's a dumb idea, and all these things were stupid ideas. And then finally, he's there talking about crypto and saying, it kind of sounds dumb, right? So the point here is that you know and can recognize when a friend or a person or a direct contact, someone you're in direct contact with, P2P contact with, is telling you a lie. When someone exaggerates too much or embellishes stories, if they're your friend and if you have real world contact with them, you end up saying, well, that person's an exaggerator. I don't really take that person seriously. I can't trust what that person says, right? Now, that's an effect we can all recognize, right? Whenever you have a friend who's known to embellish, known to tell a lie, known to say things that are exaggerated, you discount that person's opinion, right? Now, this effect of discounting a person's opinion when they have a history of getting things wrong, weirdly, strangely, never applies to the media. It never does. And the person who first recognized that was a man named Michael Crichton. Now, Michael Crichton needs a second on this show, and just in general, that all Bitcoiners should stop and acknowledge this fella. He'd have been the biggest Bitcoiner in the world. He just died a little too young for us. He died just after Bitcoin came into reality. If you don't know who Michael Crichton is, let me just educate you just for one quick second, because I love the guy. So Michael Crichton, you probably know his most famous work, Jurassic Park. He was a writer. a writer of science fiction stories. So he wrote Congo, Jurassic Park, The Andromeda Strain was his first real hit. He was actually a medical doctor before all of that stuff. He was a Harvard trained medical doctor, a literal giant, about 6'9", a literal giant, and was a real polymath, good at almost everything, and an expert in so many subjects you can't even imagine, right? Just every little subject. Throughout his life, he was friends with most American presidents. They would just call him in and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? He wrote a debunk of the media's role in global warming already in the 1990s in Playboy magazine. And I encourage all of you to read it. It's called Aliens Cause Global Warming. Now, provocative title, but you really got to get into it because it has nothing to do with the science of global warming. Although he wrote a book on the science of global warming, by the way. He was so interested in it and so up to date on all of it that he wrote his own book describing what would happen and if we had to worry or not. And his science actually holds up. He wrote that book in about 2004, and a lot of it actually still seems pretty accurate today. So he coined this Gell-Mann amnesia topic years ago. He called it Gell-Mann. This is a funny part too. He called it Gell-Mann because Gell-Mann was a physicist, a world-renowned physicist that he was just chatting about the subject with. And he said, Murray, like you're an expert in physics and you fell for this trick. So he ended up using the Gell-Mann name just to give credibility to his own idea, right? It had nothing to do with him. He was like, I throw in the name of this super famous physicist because it gives my theory credibility, the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. Gell-Mann has nothing to do with it. He's just a physicist. It's just a famous name and that's it. So Michael Crichton writes, this is probably the best definition of Gell-Mann amnesia. Briefly stated, the Gell-Mann amnesia effect is as follows. You open the newspaper to an article on some subject you know well. In Murray's case, Murray Gell-Mann, in Murray's case, physics. In mine, showbiz. In his case, all those Jurassic Park shows. You read the article and see the journalist has absolutely no understanding of either the facts or the issues. Often, the article is so wrong, it actually presents the story backwards, reversing cause and effect. I call these wet streets cause rain stories. Paper's full of them. In any case, you read with exasperation or amusement the multiple errors in a story, and then turn the page to national or international affairs and read as if the rest of the paper was somehow accurate. You turn the page and you forget what you know. So what he's basically saying is you get an expert who sees a subject, knows the journalist talking about it or the expert being quoted, everything's out of context, it is not a useful article, and you say, wow, that's ridiculous. And then you turn the page, right? And then you turn the page. So with the FTX ad we saw last night, what they're actually saying here, what they're actually telegraphing, what they're actually suggesting is that crypto people, Bitcoin people, all these folks, you can't really advertise them or market to them in the old-fashioned way. You've got to use these tricks of P2P and show that the people who have been doubting all this time are just wrong, right? And that credibility that comes from being right all the time is really worth something. And the disdain that you get from being wrong all the time is really worth something. And I think Bitcoiners, and this is sort of the cause and effect of the Gell-Mann amnesia, the more expert you are on a subject, right, the more the credibility of the expert journalist goes down, and it becomes this sort of give and take, right? So the more expert you become, the more obvious it is an article to you is silly. And this relationship then doesn't perpetuate when you turn the page and go on to another subject. Now, Bitcoiners have a truly remarkable protection against this, because moving from Super Bowl ads right away to inflation. Now we know the Federal Reserve is meeting, emergency meeting today. What's going to happen? We've been talking about it for weeks. Are they going to raise? Are they not going to raise? We don't know. Nobody knows, right? So what I'm suggesting is the P2P system in Bitcoin exposed the fraud of Gell-Mann amnesia when it came to interest rate hikes, finance news, economics news about the Federal Reserve. It sort of exposed that all these stories, are they going to raise rates? Are they not going to raise rates? Quoting all these experts, were really relying on this amnesia effect, right? It only made sense if you didn't remember what happened yesterday. And we could actually see that in 2019, the Wall Street Journal decided to ask a bunch of senior economists to make interest rate predictions for the following 12 months. So they said to all these big economists, you tell us what's going to happen in the next 12 months. They put it all in context. Well, Trump has a trade war and there's going to be this kind of stuff. The economy is going to be hot. They're going to have to raise. So every one of them said this many hikes. What ended up happening was 0 hikes. So every one of those economists got it wrong. And the news reported on it, every one of their predictions for months, right? They waited with bated breath each and every time, but they never happened. So Bitcoiners have seen this trick for a long time now. They see that when you try to rely on social amnesia, when you try to write a series of stories that forget what happened yesterday, it doesn't go anywhere. That's why Bitcoiners have such love for the Bitcoin obituaries, for the articles that predict from mainstream media, Bitcoin's dead today. So Bitcoiners and any article about Bitcoin were able to notice the Gell-Mann amnesia effect, almost inoculating them, right? Almost inoculating them. Because what ended up happening was they started seeing it in other fields, right? So it wasn't just in interest rates and financial news, although that opened it. That was the beginning of the window of light that came in. So Bitcoiners had this great ability to be able to see beyond what was going on. And in the end, this starts to become quite humorous, right? Because Bitcoiners were able to see beyond this, they're kind of prepared for what's going on. They don't require this amnesiatic effect in order to continue to take the news seriously. Now, yesterday on Jon Stewart's podcast, he calls it The Problem, right? Jon Stewart's The Problem. He had the former KC Fed chair in, Tom Hoenig. And they were talking about money, right? They're talking about inflation. They were talking about what's going on in the market. And this seemed like it was all news to Jon Stewart. So this is what Jon Stewart said. It makes sense. So he had asked this guy, Tom Hoenig, the former chair of the KC Fed, what is all this printing going on? How much was it? And they agree it was $6 trillion that were generated and created by the Federal Reserve. And so Jon Stewart's sitting there asking him, he said, what is this all about? And, the former chair is trying to explain it to Jon Stewart. And then Jon Stewart finally goes, it makes sense in the make-believe world of conjuring. Like there's a certain part of this that all seems like a mirage. It all seems sort of fake. And Tom Hoenig says, it's a fiduciary system. It's all faith-based, right? It's all faith-based, right? Jon Stewart says, oh my Lord, you have to have confidence in the currency. And then Jon Stewart replies again, it's a mass delusion, right? Mass delusion is probably a bit much. He's a comedian, don't forget, right? He's a comedian, so he's adding that comedic layer into it. But the truth is, Bitcoiners have been laughing about these guys for a long time. You can actually take any press release from the Federal Reserve mentioning future interest rates and insert the words methadone and treat it all like a heroin addict, that this heroin addict is planning on getting off of their addiction in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and it reads exactly the same, right? You can actually subtract all those words, put in methadone and heroin instead of Federal Reserve and rate hike, and you'll get the same article. They read the exact same, right? The exact same. So Jon Stewart laughing here that this whole thing is a mirage is something Bitcoiners have been saying for a long time, right? There is no amnesia for Bitcoiners because they understand the P2P nature of the network. They don't need a third party to come in and tell them it works this way or it works that way. It kind of takes away the confusion about all that stuff. You don't have to rely on anyone to tell you what's going to happen in the market tomorrow, just like we don't really need to rely on the market today to tell us if there's going to be more interest in the US dollar. Flatten the word interest for a second. We've been thinking about the word interest in terms of rate hikes and the interest and the overnight lending rate. The truth is Bitcoiners' new interest just meant simply no one's going to be interested in the US dollar as time goes forward. It's losing its attractiveness, right? It's losing the desire that most people would have it, right? The demand for the dollar is what a lot of Bitcoiners suggested is going away. And if you look at the second story here on Ukraine, right, on Ukraine today, you can start to see that is playing out, right? So in Ukraine, they have all the Russian issue with Ukraine today looks like now, so it's this quantum again. So a few days ago, they said, Ukraine said, I guess this morning or last night, they don't want to join NATO. Now, this all started because months ago, Russia gave a series of terms to Ukraine saying, don't join NATO. You're not allowed. That's what we want. We won't cause you any trouble if you don't join NATO. Now, the rest of NATO is saying, we didn't really ask Ukraine, but Ukraine said yesterday, we don't really want to be in NATO. But now Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is saying today, well, maybe we do want to be in NATO, but we don't know. So everyone's now waiting for Zelensky to give a speech. But Zelensky is also a comedian, right? Zelensky was a comedian before he was the president. I'm not sure a lot of people know that. So Zelensky was a comedian, then he became the president. So this comedian Zelensky comes out in a press conference today and says, look, media, you seem to know way more about this than I do. I know I'm just the president of the country that is going to be invaded, apparently. But if you have more information, please bring it to me, because I just don't see what you're seeing, right? Day after day, I don't see what you're seeing. Now, in the same P2P nature, right, Bitcoiners, we know a lot of Bitcoiners, and Ukraine is one of the countries with the most Bitcoin per capita in the world. So we all know people in Ukraine. So we can't, in my case, really rely on the news for what's going on. I lived in South Korea during the years that the nuclear bombs were being tested, or at least the second nuclear bomb was tested. I was there. Everyone called me, Nolan, what's going on? Are you in imminent threat of a nuclear attack? I didn't even know what they were talking about. I understood North Korea had tested a bomb. I knew a lot of the journalists that crossed and covered it, but it wasn't something that I thought was a clear and present danger to me in that day in Seoul. So I contacted my friends in Ukraine recently just to find out if they felt the same. Now, I'm not saying this anecdotal evidence proves anything. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying when I spoke to them, they said, I don't know what the media is talking about. It's just not there, right? So maybe they're totally wrong. Maybe they're totally wrong. But this idea that the media 2 days ago said there was an attack imminent, Zelensky even made a joke. Like I said, he's a comedian. They even know the time it's coming. Please tell me if the time changes. I have to know if the time changes. If my country is being attacked, please tell me. So Zelensky, right, is adding a bit of the comedic effect here, and sort of saying that you got to follow these people. They said yesterday it was one thing. Now today it's a different thing, and he's definitely playing that game too and changing. But nevertheless, remember that anyone who is close to the subject of Ukraine on the ground is sort of saying it's not really there. I'm not saying it's not going to be there. It could still be there, right? But where I'm sitting right now, I'm continuing to predict nothing there, nothing there. And the last story I have to follow today, and this one really is incredible. And we're going to try and end it with a joke too, some laughing, because right, we get to laugh a little bit with Jon Stewart on inflation. We can laugh a little bit with Zelensky in Ukraine. Is there anything funny about the truckers? What's funny there? Is it related to Gelman amnesia? Well, here. So the Canadian Prime Minister has now moved to take all the money, right? We've known that for a while. We've been talking about that for a while. We kind of hoped for that here on the show because we knew it would be a great orange pill moment. Not that I want anyone's money to be taken from them, but nevertheless, it's one of those situations where you warn someone enough that they're going to get burnt. And then when they get burnt, it's nice to say that you're right, at least in warning them, right? So I think a lot of Bitcoiners are there, and we've said, be careful for years, right? These banks are going to turn. They're going to do things that you would think only belong in a banana republic, but are actually in your great Western countries that are supposedly beyond all this stuff, right? So here's what happened. Canadian banks, this is what the Prime Minister said, Canadian banks are monitoring financial activity very closely and taking action as necessary. Today, that Prime Minister has decided to invoke the emergency war measure, basically the War Measures Act, right? The Emergency Powers Act. The reason he has to do that is because a few days ago, the state, the province of Ontario, applied for a special disposition allowing or prohibiting any person from disposing of, dealing with, or in any manner whatsoever, all monetary donations made through blah, 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 go, send, go, or whatever that thing was called. So whoever was issued, and any and all parties, right, had this injunction. You couldn't give money and they would take it away. Now, what does that say? So why are there two things? Why is the Canadian Prime Minister, federal Prime Minister, taking emergency action when this provision a few days ago, section 490.8 of the Criminal Code said we can go do this? Well, the reason is the thing on Friday, the Ontario Attorney General and the court that said it is actually under the supervision of higher courts. This could have been struck down very easily because it's obviously unconstitutional. The other court in Ontario, the other court in Ottawa said only the noise of the honking is what's illegal, right? Only the noise of the honking is illegal. The protest is fine. The injunction, the only thing that is illegal in any of these protests is honking. You can't honk anymore, right? And it looks like it's more or less being adhered to. The act of protesting is fine, right? It's completely fine. And so what this other court gave as this injunction against the financial considerations only really had a few hours in it, because another court, with what was clearly laid out in the injunction against noise, saying the protest was totally fine and legal. And a protest that requires finance, any protest requires finance, so the financing was inherently legal. So the motion that was given the other day probably would have got struck down immediately. Therefore, that's why you need the Emergency Measures Act in order to take the money, right? You can't just do it one after the other. And what makes me laugh here is that, we got guys in Bitcoin, there's this guy, JP Conning. He's been around for a long time, knows everything about Bitcoin, apparently, worked for the central bank in Canada. I think he writes for CoinDesk sometimes now. He's like a stable coin guy, I guess now, and a CBDC guy, kind of a policy wonk from Canada. I follow him because he puts these really cool pictures out of old coinage and old bills, and he's like of the specie of the money itself, right? He's a historian and that stuff, and quite useful. But this is what he said. He tweeted this: I don't see how Bitcoin is a viable alternative funding route for the Truck Convoys nonprofit. The same judge who issued the restraint order on the Give, Send, Go can also issue one on its Bitcoins. Route closed. Disposing those funds is now an offense. So his whole argument is that it's an offense, and it's an offense. That's what's preventing everyone, apparently, according to an expert. That's what's preventing anyone from using Bitcoin as a viable means to get around what is clearly government overreach. Apparently, it's an offense, and that's enough to persuade people, right? So here's another fella relying on Gelman amnesia, right? That you would just be an idiot to not understand that we're all criminals anyway if we're in Bitcoin. That was already the case years ago, right? We knew we were criminals years ago. The way the laws were written. I lived in New York City for years and dealt with Bitcoin. I was always a criminal, always. There's nothing else that I was. Everyone ignored it, but we were all criminals, technically, right? Technically. So here's a guy like JP Conning, degrees up the ass, knew about Bitcoin years ago, still telling you to forget what you know, right? Bitcoin doesn't care about an injunction from a court. Are you kidding me? That's the point, right? That is the actual point, that it is unseizable. You can't take it from someone, right? So why would anyone sit there and say, oh, well, we can't give in Bitcoin now because, geez, the nonprofit might lose their money. Oh my goodness, right? No one's saying that in Bitcoin. Nobody. It's not even a point. It's nothing to do with anything. We would love for them, the authorities in Canada, to start trying to take the Bitcoin. That would be humorous indeed, right? That would be a good time. So let them try and do it. So in the end, this Gelman amnesia, right? What the FTX article reminded us is that you don't have the amnesia when it's friends. You don't have the amnesia when it's P2P, right? You don't have the amnesia when you have a direct relationship with the person lying to you. You get the amnesia when a third party enters the equation. When a third party enters the equation and says, you got to do this, you got to do that, this is what's going to happen, that's what's going to happen. And then they get everything wrong and you just ignore it and you move on and do it again, right? The media enjoys this unique ability, but it's waning. It's losing the ability to do that. And my bet is that the actual hinge upon which Gelman amnesia works is financial media, is these ridiculous predictions about the economy that fail and don't come true one day after the other, again and again and again, and will not for a long time. We are on Bitcoin's schedule now, and we're on the schedule that Bitcoiners predicted years ago. Didn't matter that COVID was there. They predicted interest would never be high again in the dollar. And when I say interest, I mean no one gives a shit. No one wants it. Demand's down, right? And that would not stop. That would not stop. Doesn't matter what people say on TV, on CNBC. It doesn't matter what they say in that seance today they're having at the Federal Reserve, right? Interest just won't be there tomorrow. And my bet is interest in Bitcoin will be higher tomorrow than it was today. And if we can close the gap on this amnesia, if we can open people's minds to having the flexibility to change, not fill in the blanks just because someone gave you the information, we'll be that much closer to ending this misery and getting on with our lives. So that's the episode today. Gelman amnesia. Don't forget.
Awesome, Nolan. That was very I learned a ton. I mean, I want to stop for a second and kind of talk to you a little bit about the honking the horns being what the law is. What do you know what jurisdictions, what counties this is?
Yeah, that would have been
specifically?
so I imagine that would have been the city of Ottawa that gave out the injunctions. The Superior Court is, if you're watching any of the camera work on the scene there's sort of a statue, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It's one of the main points you see. The court would be just down the road there. So I bet it came from that court right there.
That is absolutely insane. I mean,
And the injunction is only against the justice went out of his way. The injunction is only against the honking, nothing
so
else.
like, so if I were to shoot off a firecracker, say if firecrackers, whether or not I don't know if they're legal, or like if I blasted an air horn.
Yeah, they're legal. I bet you the spirit of the injunction is against any disturbance of the peace. There's probably hours to it. I didn't read the whole original injunction. I just know that it is limited to noise. Maybe it's not honking of the horn. They do have to be specific. They can't just say you can't make noise, right? So they've got to put some list to it, but they can also qualify sort of a level, right? You can't honk a horn or use another air aspirated noisemaker at this hour or something.
Right.
Yeah, my bad.
No. No need to apologize at all. I think you did it a little subconsciously just by bringing up the fact that this man is a comedian and these laws seem like jokes, and it's reality. And this is not, Max Keiser would have loved for the writer of this reality to be writing some stuff for the IMF and banking system, but here we are.
Economists are hilarious. They are hilarious, right? They're good writers. They're good writers.
My freshman year econ professor begs to differ with that statement, but
even the Paul Krugman letter this weekend, he wrote an article in New York Times, and I mean, I'm sure most Bitcoiners have blocked him. He's completely wrong about everything. But just as far as comedic touch in writing, he wrote a really good article about the vaccines and the fighting and everything this weekend. So I recommend it to anyone. I mean, really funny, really funny. I don't read that stuff normally, but it was funny enough for me to read.
Well, I'll have to check it out. Nolan, we appreciate you joining us as always and sharing your wisdom with everyone. Be sure to tune in. Next time we'll have you on. To be honest, off the top of my head, I do not remember when the next breakup.
I'm coming tomorrow. I'll be here.
You are coming tomorrow.
I'll be here tomorrow. Yeah.
Be sure to tune in tomorrow for the next breakup segment. In the meantime, guys, we're gonna cut to a quick commercial break, and we'll be back shortly.
Where's John?
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys for continuing to tune in. For those of you who missed Nolan's breakup segment, be sure to go back and watch it when you can. But in the meantime, we have a very exciting mining report update from our guys, Eric and John, and they are joined by Alejandro and a new guest this week, Scott O'Ford. Thank you guys for joining us. I'll pass the mics off over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Q. So I guess this week we're going to look into some Bitcoin mining stats, see where the market's at. Then from there, we're going to cover Scott's crypto mining conference that he had last week. And then we're going to finish up with some industry news. So let's jump right in it. I'm going to share my screen here.
All right. Alejandro with a lot of miners as usual.
Yeah, I know. The last ones found them.
So looks like a hash rate currently is up quite a bit. Alejandro, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah. So hash rate has really picked up lately. It's at the highest it's ever actually been. So I'm very happy about that. That's why I bought myself a whole row of miners to celebrate, because it felt good. Now, but it's an amazing accomplishment from the Bitcoin mining network. It's not only these large operations across, the US and Kazakhstan and Russia and other places, it's also solo miners. I've seen a very large increase in solo mining, and that's definitely adding up to the hash rate. So congratulations, Bitcoin, for the best security we've ever had.
Nice. And that solo mining, how are you tracking that? Is that how are you kind of following along, and what does that mean exactly?
It means that you can, instead of joining a pool, you can you don't have to, you just solo mine it yourself. Usually solo miners, there's a few large ones, large mining operations that mine solo, but the majority of the solo miners are small, like home mining with one old machine or some old block eruptors. They have very little hash rate, so they join a solo mining pool and try to earn a whole block instead of earning very little. So I think there's like a new sort of renaissance in solo mining, and I think it's awesome.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. The hash rate has been kind of staying. The difficulty though is also very sky high. So that's how it usually goes. If the hash rate goes sky high, so it's difficulty. So we're seeing that as well. That means that it's a little bit more difficult to find a block than it was 2016 blocks before. So yeah, you're looking at quite a high level of difficulty, but that's expected, and it's just the way the Bitcoin mining network works. It's meant to stay, to maintain a constant 10-minute block emission, and it's doing very successfully.
Oh, yeah, I just want to touch on solo mining again one more time. So the way I think of it is kind of, it's, if you have a hash rate, you can plug in maybe some old mining machines. You're kind of just playing the lottery, and you're just hoping that, hey, over the next couple of years, maybe I'll get the chance of mining a lucky block. Is that the case, or is there a little more nuance to this where pleb miners can actually take advantage of this?
It's that's a good question. I think it's a lottery. It is definitely a lottery. But we're seeing, a lot of solo miners join these solo mining pools, and we're seeing these pools grow somewhat, a lot more than they were last couple of years. So it's good. What that means, though, for the solo miners, that if they join one of these solo mining pools, as they're called, then yeah, their chances of finding a block are even better, because what the solo mining pool does is that if they find a block, they somehow track who found the block in their pool, and they reward that miner with the whole entire block. They take a small fee, so it's actually quite a interesting workaround for solo mining. I think there's a lot of future in that.
Right. So I'm thinking of maybe if you don't want to join a giant pool and get a very small reward, maybe this is kind of an in-between where you join this kind of solo miner
I
pool.
wouldn't call it in between though, because
Okay.
The large mining pools, they have different payment schemes. Like the largest ones have FPPS, fee pay per share, and what that basically means is that they'll get a constant emission of Bitcoins that are found according to how much hash rate. So it's a constant revenue, and that you can forecast, with your projections, with your business, with your operation. It makes life much more easier. I think it's not, I wouldn't say in between, but I think it's a legitimate way for solo mining. So let's say you would rather have one of these S9s as a heater than a heater. Like I have a heater right next to me, and I should plug in my S9. Instead of wasting all the electricity on heating with the heater, I can use S9, and then I can join one of these solo mining pools in hopes that I find, a block. And if that solo mining pool is pooling all the solo miners together, then my chances of finding a block have increased. So yeah, I think it's an interesting concept, and I think I find it very interesting. I'm very much looking into it and seeing what else can be done.
Yeah, me too. Is there any resources you can point to for those interested in just researching these solar miner pools?
Yeah, sure. There's a website called miningpoolstats.stream that shows all the mining pools there are in all the major coins there are, but Bitcoin in this case. And you can check on that site. You'll see like a small, it says solo next to it, and you'll see, you can just click on it and check it out, check out the site, whatnot.
Yeah, thanks. I would have to definitely check that out soon. Cool. I guess next, any comments on the current hash price?
The hash price, yeah. So I think the hash price on Brains, I'm still not too sure how they calculate it. But I know how they calculate it, but I don't know how they're getting where they're getting the variables from. In any case, the hash price for me in terms of selling machines has decreased, and yeah, it always seems to follow the price. But it lags. It lags behind the price, which means that the cost of miners lag behind the price increase or decrease. Usually, if the price increases, the miners increase in price a bit quicker than decrease if the price goes down. But that has a lot to do with human involvement. Yeah, not much more to say. Hash price is. I have to speak to the Brains guys to see exactly what the hell they're talking about here.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Maybe for next segment next week, we could talk about those nuances as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good.
So if I was looking into getting a miner for myself, should I wait until hash price falls more, or is it generally like when's a good time to get into the market? Is that an indicator at all?
I get this question a lot. I think if you're gonna get into mining, you should you should make it a kind of you have to be decisive. Like you're gonna have to get in there eventually. You can't wait forever. It's like buying Bitcoin. You can say all you want, you're gonna wait until the price falls, and then the price fell, but it didn't fall enough. You wanted to wait a little bit more, and then the price went up. So I think it's a good idea to just kind of understand the economics of mining, of your one S9 or of your 100 S19s, whatever it might be. Understand what you're doing, and and then just take the plunge. That's my advice.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Rather just plug it in as soon as possible rather than try to time the market.
Oh yeah. If you buy a miner, I always say as soon as the miner has been acquired, and you have it in your hands, the clock's ticking. You need to turn it on ASAP. I always, for me, I get very uneasy if miners that I bought or that the company I work for has bought is with us and it's not online. That's like that's a tragedy. That's a nightmare. I can't sleep.
That's a good way to put it. Coming back to the current hash rate here, I was wondering how reaching this kind of new all-time high hash rate, how does that affect Bitcoin price at all? And looking out the next couple months, what can people expect in terms of Bitcoin price?
I don't know. I'm sorry, but I try to refrain from speaking about the price at all. So that's my
Okay, no worries. John, do you have any input there?
Never go up.
Number does go up. Yeah, you got that right. Okay. Last question for Alejandro before we dive into Scott's conference here. Alejandro, this is a little bit more of a tech talk, a little deep dive. Can you define the mempool and how does mining profitability differ when the mempool is congested compared to when it's not? Is it even in effect at all?
That's a good question. So the mempool stands for memory pool, and essentially that's like this nebulous area, otherwise known as a node, in which your transactions are essentially, tracked would be the right word, or stored until a miner. It's not stored; it's tracked. So until a miner, puts it into a block. If the mempool gets congested, what that means is that there's a lot of people trying to use using Bitcoin at that moment, which in turn creates the market, a market for the fee market, sorry, which increases the fees, which increases the money or the Bitcoin that the Bitcoin miners will make. So each of the largest mining, almost all of the large mining pools, there's a few that don't do this, but the majority, they add the fees in the reward when someone when the pool finds a block, they add the fees and they give that to their miners. So basically, yeah, if the mempool is congested, it means that there's a lot of transactions, which creates a fee market, which makes the fees go up, and the miners are happy because they make more money. So it's miners look at it as a good thing. I always see when the mempool is congested, everyone's getting more money. Miners getting paid essentially. So miners are happy. So use the Bitcoin network, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's a great explanation. So as a miner, you kind of want the mempool to be full and congested so you get more fees. But as a regular Bitcoiner, try to do some peer-to-peer trading, maybe you don't want the mempool as full so you can get very low transaction cost for fees.
Yeah. But I mean, as a user, you can always have to pay. Eventually, like right now, we're still in the early days and we're paying low fees. But there's going to be a time where using the layer 1 base of Bitcoin is going to always carry a high or a fee in some sort. So enjoy these last couple of days or months or years before we start seeing the fees exploding and miners making more money on the fees. But
yeah, I agree. Enjoy it while it lasts. Okay, we're gonna pivot real quick over to Scott Offord here, he held Scott's crypto conference this past week, and I believe it was in Texas. We also sent some Bitcoin Magazine representatives there. I know Dylan LeClaire was there, as well as a couple other players. So Scott, I was just wondering, can you give us an overview of the event? How did it go?
Yeah. No, it was awesome. Another word I've been using to describe it was epic. Partly for me, just getting 1,000 miners, mining professionals and newbies all together in the same place was just amazing. Just want to say it was great seeing Alejandro again on here. But the conference, it's called Scott's Mining Conference, and it actually took place at the Kalahari. It's a very family-friendly place and very fitting, for what we're trying to accomplish here. Yeah, so that's the website. And like I said, we had 1,000 people out there. Our goal was 1,000 people. We actually had more register, but and next time we're hoping to make it 3 times bigger. But it was just great having all these people here. We actually had Paul Oakenfold, DJ, the after party, which was my favorite part, just dancing with other people in the mining industry and having a wonderful time. But some very interesting topics were discussed by a lot of these speakers. We had a ton of panels, and you can see Michael Saylor was there. Our keynote came virtually, and Tony Vase as well. So a lot of these people you might not know. They're not necessarily famous, but they know mining. They're in the trenches doing the actual work of Bitcoin mining. So I was honored to have everybody there, and hey, good, clean fun, right? So some of these conferences, they take place in places like Las Vegas or Miami, and I'm definitely going to the one in Miami coming up with Bitcoin 2022. But some of these after parties take place at very questionable venues sometimes, like strip clubs and whatnot. And I just wanted to provide something a little bit different. Like I said when I was doing my opening remarks at the conference, it's a place you wouldn't be ashamed to bring your grandma or your kids. So there were actually people there with their whole families taking a vacation just so that one of their spouses could come and attend some of the sessions.
Yeah, heard a lot of people saying that they didn't this year, but they would next year too, because the venue was so family friendly. So
exactly,
heard great things about the venue, the just overall the location, and then obviously the conference overall. Scott, the kind of attendee base. I mean, 1,000 people is one of the biggest mining conferences, mining specific conferences that has been held certainly in North America. What kind of more can you say about how the attendee breakdown ended up? Kind of retail miners, institutional folks, energy folks. Kind of what was the audience like?
Yeah, no, and I'd just like to say, I know that Bitcoin Magazine and all you guys technically might even be competitors, but I like to see this as co-opetition, right? So thank you for letting me talk about this on your stream here.
Of course. Hey, more events, more onboarding, more education is good for the whole industry for sure.
So like you said, education. So there were people there learning about this for the very first time. So we had some sessions talking about just very newbie things, and then there were professionals there, people from publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies. CEOs, executives who have been doing this, they already have hundreds or thousands of miners plugged in. But the one thing though that everybody appreciated, at least from my feedback, we did a tour of one of the largest Bitcoin mining facilities around, at least in North America, at the Windstone Riot blockchain facility in Rockdale, Texas. And so Chad and Jason and them were very pleasant to work with. It was just amazing for people to be able to see the magnitude of a facility like that. So we call it the Mega Farm Tour. And we had 150 of the 1,000 attendees bus out there for an hour, and their jaws were just dropping, and even for me, I've seen this stuff. I've been around. I went to the Windstone property, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago, when it was nothing but dirt, and they had excavators moving dirt around, and now they have, 300 megawatts online, and they're pushing for maybe 700, 800 coming up here soon. So that was an example. It was just for a little bit of something for everybody, the newbies and the professionals.
Hey, Eric, can you close that screen share real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, really cool to be able to take folks to one of the largest sites in the country, and it's right there by the event. Super cool. The events Bitmain used to do, they would sometimes fly out to Mongolia with a subset of the attendees and see some of their facilities and parts of China. So really fun now to have the ability to do that and see something at scale in Texas.
And Texas is really the hotbed right now. People were saying, well, why did you do it here? And they were saying, thank you for putting this on. It's just, people love meeting in person and putting a name to a face, because a lot of times we're just we're hanging out online on Twitter. It's all text, and just putting a name to a face is great. But yeah, so I said two things. Two things made this successful. One was that it was in Texas, and two was because it was at the Kalahari Resorts. It was just a wonderful venue and a wonderful state to hold the conference in, and we want to do it again. So we very, very tentative, but I don't think we're going to wait a whole year to do this. We're going to cut that short because we all know in crypto, like 1 year is like 5 years, right? In the real world. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna do this again very shortly, and 3 times bigger.
There you go. Content wise, what were kind of some of the things that really stood out to you, or to the audience, content wise? What got the most pickup? What were you kind of excited about? Speakers, topics.
Yeah. So other than the speakers, we actually had some workshops, and there were a couple hundred people that attended a miner repair workshop. One thing that's lacking right now in this industry is technicians, actual operators and people that know how to plug these things in and how to troubleshoot miners to get them back up and running if they're breaking, right? So a big part of this is we spent an entire morning and afternoon just training people with the help of ASIC Master. So ASICmaster.com, they are in Chicago, and I think as well in Portland, but so they're a burgeoning ASIC mining repair company. And people just had a really great time getting their hands dirty, actually touching the hash boards and figuring out how the control boards and hash boards all work together. But other than that, some of the speakers, like Michael Saylor was talking about, hey, what's the best thing to do? He said, number 1, buy Bitcoin. Number 2, mine Bitcoin. I can't remember what number 3 was, but and then one of the biggest topics, really, something that people were so very interested in was immersion. Instead of air cooling your miners, you dunk them in liquid. It seems like a very scary thing to do, dunking your electronic gear at 240 volts into a tub of liquid. But we had exhibitors there that were making immersion cooling systems, either just for your own home or even on a large scale. They have entire 40-foot containers full of miners that are dunked in liquid. And I'm sure we've talked about the benefits of immersion here before, but so you can just imagine, all sorts of topics.
Super cool. And saw some cool photos of immersion being shown on site, which is fun to have. I think last week Alejandro was actually calling in on his way to a large site that used immersion exclusively in Spain. So
nice.
Pretty cool. Yeah, people were able to see that in person in Texas. Q.
I want to kind of just present a question to Sky, if I can interject, and Alejandro, if you have an answer as well. Is there a sort of technology that excites you out of the mining space, whether it's energy capture, whether it's increased capacity in these computer chips? Is there a specific facet of the technological develop that most excites you? I present it to both of you.
In mining itself or outside of mining?
Mining.
Scott, you want to go first?
Yeah. No, the one thing that comes to mind, and I don't know if we're allowed to swear on here, but mining with pig shit.
Oh, that's
it, right.
I took a lot of that.
Yeah, Alejandro knows all about this, but
I'm all about pig shit. I know that's my thing.
No. But turning pig shit into usable energy, and actually, moving this stuff into the green space. There's a lot of stuff that's going on with coal, in other places, but pig shit seems to be the new fad here, and I actually want to start getting into that myself. For example, I was thinking, well, so I actually have this project I'm working on. I'm helping my friend get a house up and running in Milwaukee. He bought it for $17,000. It's run down. The windows are all boarded up. but we're turning it into a Bitcoin mine. So it's kind of like a reverse gentrification of a very bad neighborhood where the average annual income is around $25,000. So what we wanted to do is perhaps take the community's food scraps and put them into a what's it called, like a digester, and start turning that into power that runs miners. So yeah, things like that kind of excites me. Finding new ways to maybe reuse heat or to use energy that's not being produced by things like coal.
Yeah, that's super cool. When you're starting with pig shit, and there, the things that you can direction you can go for very cool.
Yeah.
Andre?
What about you, Alejandro?
I think John got too much pig shit in his feed. Yeah, I think it's actually the reality. I've been going around all of Europe for the last 3 months, and the reality is, we're not the US or Russia, which have a lot of oil or gas. So a lot of European miners are creatively finding ways to mine, be it through animal waste or animal excrements, or having solar panels in their factory, and old PPA that they've been using, and then they have an extra megawatt left over, then they start mining there. There's a lot of creative ways Bitcoin mining is spreading across the European continent. It's that's what I've been seeing. I've seen all sorts of very all and all of them are using sustainable. I mean, the majority are using sustainable or whatever you want to call it. Semantics doesn't matter, but it's just not oil. It's just not like, it's not using coal or oil or gas. It's using some other form of energy. And it's exciting to see how it develops and how it's distributed across the Europe, and these are all Western European countries I'm talking about, because Eastern Europe has a lot more mining, but Western Europe, it's kind of scattered. It's a fragmented, but there's like small pockets of mining all across Spain, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark. It's cool. It's cool. Who would I didn't know that, and I'm all day looking into this stuff, and I didn't even know there's mining going on all over the continent. It's just not big. It's just small pockets here and there. 100 machines here, 10 here, 20 there. But it's cool to see. It's really cool to see.
It helps to decentralize the network too, right?
Yeah, it's helping decentralize the network. Let's say another tragedy happens where like another country bans Bitcoin or whatever. It's good because there's a bunch of miners all over the globe now. It's all over the place. The people you would least expect it are mining Bitcoin. It's unbelievable.
Can you just discuss a little bit, because the idea that we can continue to decentralize the network so long as more and more countries continue to expand their mining, how do we help push that forward? Because mining materials cost a lot, the rigs cost a lot. How do we help these other countries sort of build out their mining infrastructure while still continuing to see it build out in countries like America and in Russia and so on?
It's a good question. That's something I ask myself on a daily basis. I think a cheaper, more accessible rig is probably a good way to start or to look into. That's I think also I think we need to at least in other countries that are not the US and Russia, which have strong mining communities, very large mining communities who work together to sort of speak back to regulators and politicians and whatever. I think that's needed too, some sort of unity and so to speak in between with miners. Let's see how that develops. Ross, I think we're gonna probably see many. I think in the next year or two, especially because the regulators are nonstop bothering us. With they read one headline and then they think they know everything about Bitcoin mining. So then they go and they talk and they get some votes and whatever. So we have to speak back to them. Otherwise, no one's going to do it. So I think I foresee in the in the near future many more organizations working together or miners working together to sort of tackle these issues and kind of in the past mining has been very secret because it's just early days and it was those days no one knew the hell mining was, so it was better to be quiet. But now it's changed, so we have to also change.
Yeah, one thing I'm doing myself is my 5-year goal, basically before I turn 50. So I've got 5 years. I want to make my own miner. So it's going to be a U.S. or North American based ASIC miner for SHA 256. And I'm hoping, just like Alejandro said, make these more accessible to people. So you see the trend right now. Miners have to be 150 or 200 terahash, and they consume 3,000 or 4,000 watts. I'd like to maybe give it a try where maybe we do something a little bit smaller. Something very efficient, but maybe something that regular homes can handle. Because you see some of these altcoin miners, they're fanless, noiseless. You can use them as heaters in your house, and you can actually make money with it while you're heating your house. There isn't really anything like that right now for Bitcoin. Maybe I'm kind of giving away my secrets here, but I'd like to see noiseless or fanless Bitcoin miners again. So that's going to be something I'm working on in the next 5 years. Maybe even sooner if I can convince somebody to give me just a few more $1 million.
Ask Bitcoin Magazine.
Yes.
Hey, I would be your first customer. I'm living in a row home in the city, and what's holding me back right now from getting my own rigs is exactly that. It's the noise, and I could deal with the heat. The heat would be great especially the winter, but the noise right now would be way too much. So let me know when that comes out.
I will. You will know.
Cool. Scott, is there anything else you want to touch upon with your conference before we wrap up that segment?
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, it was just amazing. We're coming out with another reel. We did like a day 1 wrap up and a day 2 wrap up video. You might have seen that. I posted them on YouTube. But now we're wrapping up a third video to kind of encapsulate everything. And then I've also asked the production guys to do one that shows how, hey, there's actually women in mining and some women playing very important roles in mining. So I just wanted to say that because I did see in some of these chat groups out there saying, oh, I know there's no ladies in mining. And I said, well, maybe you should have come to Scott's mining conference and you would have seen differently. But yeah, it's just exciting to see everybody come together and for the purpose of sharing their knowledge. Like Alejandro said, in the past, people have been very secretive about it, and they don't necessarily want to share what they have because, technically we're competitors, right, as miners, but we really, for the sake of Bitcoin adoption, we need to spread the word. We need to teach people how to do this because, it's not about us anymore. It's about the future generations. So the more people we could teach about Bitcoin and the more people we can get into Bitcoin mining, the better it is going to be for all of us, right? A rising tide floats all boats, I guess they say. So
yeah, nicely said, Scott.
Couldn't agree more. And if listeners want to go check out those recap videos, what's your YouTube page?
I don't know, probably Scott's Mining Conference. Just go to YouTube and look for that. Hopefully something good comes up.
Sounds good. Thank you, Scott.
No, we just started the channel like 2 days ago.
Okay.
And I had a competition saying who's going to be the first subscriber. And so, but I think we're up to like maybe 50 subscribers now. But yeah, let's see if we can grow that user base.
Yeah, let's jack these numbers up. Okay, I think that's going to end that segment for now. And then, Sky, feel free to stay on the line here. We're just going to talk through a couple of news that came out this past week. Cool. So, share my screen again real quick. So for Alejandro here, first one, Bitcoin miner Merkle partners with Bitmain for 500 megawatt farm. This facility should be able to host over 150,000 of Bitmain's Bitcoin mining rigs. Do you have any comment on that and Bitmain's presence, I guess, in the mining market as top dog?
Sure. So, back in the day when we used to buy mining equipment, it was just buying mining equipment. Nowadays, I guess if you buy a lot, then now you're, officially a partner or whatnot. But no, that's jokes aside. That's definitely a very, very amazing. That's 500 megawatt data center is an impressive amount of electricity. That takes a lot of work, and Bitmain is still, top dog in this game, and providing just 150,000 Bitcoin mining rigs in itself is a hell of a amazing, is an accomplishment, right? Not any company could, manufacture and send over and all that, all the stuff it takes to do that. It's hard. It's good. I'm very, again, these big mining farms are popping up all over the world, and it's and they're going to be using. I see they're going to be deploying all types of S19s, the XP, the J Pro, the S19 Hydro. Yeah, so I can only I'm trying to envision like how their facility must be if they have such different equipment. It's gonna be, well, I guess they can figure it out, but definitely good news for Washington as well.
I wonder how many years it's going to take to actually accomplish. But yeah, I don't know how many people know the dynamics of this, but very shortly ago, was it last year maybe, Bitmain and Bitdeer, they separated as two different companies because the two major shareholders were having arguments, disagreements on I guess the future and how to run things. But so Bitdeer is now doing all of the mining and hosting and all that, and then Bitmain is doing the equipment manufacturing. So it's interesting to see now that Bitmain is trying to build up that part of their company again. Not that they didn't have it all of a sudden. So
yeah, I almost feel as Bitdeer, it'd be tough for them to go the other way, getting into the hardware manufacturing, whereas Bitmain, they can go more into the cloud hosting if they really want to.
I think we should just let them be. We've had enough. We've seen enough fireworks from those two guys. We don't need them to go back together.
Moving up and on.
We shall see. All right. Next article here. Core Scientific mined over 1,000 Bitcoin for the second month in a row. The public miner deposited all Bitcoin mined into custody and now holds over 6,300 Bitcoin. So I guess my first question is related to Core Scientific and how are they a player in the industry? And as well, how do you guys feel about Bitcoin miners now custodying all their Bitcoin they mine rather than selling it?
Well, I think miners have been holding their Bitcoin for a very long time. I don't think this is a new trend at all. Miners have in the past, they would sell what was needed to pay off electricity, rents, personnel, whatnot. But the vast majority of miners, since all I can remember, have been holding their Bitcoin. I think you have, like, I always ask the question back to the person who's asked me this or who said that comment. It's like, why would you get into Bitcoin mining not to hold Bitcoin? It's kind of it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Mm-hmm. So I congratulate Core Scientific. Those guys have a very tight ship, very professional operation, and the team is very top of the line, top A class guys. So I'm glad they're doing a good job. I'm glad they're doing well because they're doing a good job.
So yeah, the key word that sticks out to me there is deposited in custody. So that makes me wonder, what does that really mean by custody? I don't know if a lot of people understand that, or if they're trying to say something specific with this article, being that, are they custodying it in a certain way? Or does that just mean like they're putting it into their own hot wallets or into their cold storage or what?
That's a good question, actually. I guess.
Are they using a service to
Does it say?
hold that Bitcoin?
Yeah, I'm trying to skim real quick to see if I can find anything.
I don't think it says anything.
No.
I guess it's just holding.
Yeah, I mean, they're publicly traded, or they're is there anything they have to do custody wise with that being the case? Do you know if they're allowed to borrow from what they're custodying, if it's with like Gemini or something? Borrow against?
I would assume so, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting that all these public miners, a lot of whom were at Scott's conference, need to be transparent with a lot of these details. Whereas Alejandro, kind of to your point of people, holding most of the Bitcoin they've mined in the past, big private companies or companies that didn't necessarily need to disclose what they were doing with it. So I think kind of a cool thing for us to be able to watch now that all these companies are public.
Oh yeah,
many of these companies are public.
Good point, John.
Agreed. Okay, let's move on to our last article here before we wrap this segment up. I know we discussed the news of Intel's new ASIC chip, but while we have Scott here, I'd like to hear just what he thinks about Intel coming into the market and how they will compete in the next few years here.
From what I understand, they've had ASIC SHA-256 for a while. They just haven't really done anything with it.
Okay.
And I think maybe even back to 2018, they had something that possibly could be magnitudes better. I heard from one source that maybe their technology is kind of on par with like maybe what an S19 might be as far as efficiency. I don't know, and then I've heard from other people that, well, is Intel really going to get into this, or is this kind of like a PR move? Are they just kind of dipping their toe to see what people think? I don't know. It's a good question, but I welcome innovation. There's all sorts of companies now talking about getting into this, and even Square changed their name to Block, and now they're coming up with a miner. It's awesome. That's great to see. I think any competition in this area is good. It's good for everybody.
I agree. I think the competition is very good. We're gonna see. I think we're gonna see some interesting stuff coming on into the future. Like right now, the Bitcoin mining and manufacturing is basically compromised of two companies, really, MicroBT and Bitmain. You can kind of count Canon, and there's no offense to Canon, but they're much smaller than those two big boys. And Bitmain is much bigger than MicroBT. So it's competition is needed, and competition is good. Competition is what Bitcoin is, but especially Bitcoin mining is all about. And I think in terms of, we could sit here and speculate and talk about rumors all day or all night, in my case, but I think we should just wait till 23rd of February where they're going to come out with all the details, and then we can talk about it then.
Yeah.
So look forward to that, and I guess we'll cover it in maybe not next Monday, but the Monday after that. Looking forward to that as well. So, Cast here, while I still have you, any closing thoughts before we end the mining segment for this Monday's show?
Cool. Sorry.
Anyone? Do you want to comment anything before we wrap this up?
I don't know. I think
forward to this week.
I think that's kind of it for me. Everyone's I think is very excited to find out what Intel's going to do, and it was a good recap talking to you guys. I'm also very happy to see Scott. Next time I'll be going to the conference. Couldn't make it this time because of vaccination issues, but let's just do it that. But yeah, thanks for having me, and look forward to next Monday.
Look forward to it. Oh yeah, one last thing. What we're doing right now is we're focusing on education in the mining industry. So we're actually in March, we have 3 events. We're doing a virtual operations training. So we're calling it a build a mine boot camp, where people can come 5 days in a row every day. And if you do your homework, there's a special treat at the end. So we're teaching people how to build these like 1 and 2 megawatt farms. We call them micro mineries. And then another thing in the middle of March, we're doing a miner repair training course. So you can actually learn very in-depth hands-on how to do that, kind of continuing on from the conference. And then at the end of the month, we're doing an in-person operations training course where you learn everything you need to know about power, computer networks, business models, as far as do you want to be self-mining, do you want to be hosting, and all that. So if you want information on that, you can find me on Telegram. That's where I hang out mostly. But yeah, otherwise, hey, thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. Scott, what's your Telegram handle so everyone knows?
Yeah, you got to be very careful about this. If you're going to search for my Telegram handle, start with the @ and type in OFFORD SCOTT. So it's Offered Scott. You might see some impersonators, some scammers in there. If you're talking to me, something's going to pop up, and it's going to be my bot, and it's going to say, hey, here's how you prove that you're talking to Scott. And it will take you to GitHub repo, where you can compare my username to my user ID on Telegram, and you'll know if you're talking to me or a fake Scott. Just be careful.
Yeah, watch out for the scammers. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for attending this week, and look forward to having you back in near future here.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, John.
See you guys.
See y'all.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you so much for that mining segment. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back shortly. So stick around, and we'll be chatting some more about Bitcoin news. Welcome back. Welcome back. It is afternoon, even for me. I know it is late at night for those of you watching in Europe and beyond. I want to thank everyone who tuned in today. We had such an awesome time chatting with Max and Stacy down in El Salvador, hearing about all the things that they're seeing. Another amazing episode of the Breakup from Nolan, and then a wonderful mining report. So thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. It was awesome getting to spend Valentine's Day with all of you tuning in. And if you want to hang out with us in real life, use code YTMAG and get 10% off of your Bitcoin 22 tickets. And we'll see you in Miami, guys.